Chapter 19. In the evening, at the entrance of an aristocrat's manor in the East District of Lion City, a few men in green clothes greeted the guards while laughing and joking, then entered the manor from the side door. No one noticed that in the darkness tens of meters away from them, a man dressed in black was standing there quietly. This was Tang In, who had followed them all the way here. These men in green didn't manage to stop Tang In at the hotel. Instead, he took the opportunity to track them and found out that they were here. Looking at the Dirk family's Viscount emblem on the main entrance, Tang In shook his head speechlessly. It was indeed Winston. Now that he knew the target, it was easy to guess the reason. It was probably because Josiah had been looking for him more frequently these few days. The library wasn't a secret place, so news of him gradually reached Winston's ears. That was why he had followed him today. Femme fatale. Tang In suddenly felt as though he had been unjustly implicated. But no matter what, he already had the intention to kill Winston. No one was willing to be followed. Moreover, Tang In was an assassin now. Tang In walked one round around the Dirk Manor from afar. After a while, he disappeared into the night. Of course, he couldn't rush in a kill now. He wasn't prepared at all, and the security here was tight. It wasn't a good place to make a move. The aristocrat's manor wasn't something that the mistress's house could compare to. If he were to sneak in casually, there was a high possibility that he would die before he could take revenge. The next day, Tang In put on the hermit cloak and arrived at the Thieves' Union early in the morning. As expected, the mission had been confirmed to be completed. Tang In told the members of the Union the mission number and received 4 gold and 50 silver. He went out, quickly found a hotel, and entered the system space. Ding! Congratulations to Assassin Tang In for completing the mission of following an aristocrat. Mission difficulty F. Completion evaluation. D. Experience gained 25 points. Tang In heaved a sigh of relief. The experience gained from such a mission was indeed low. It was just enough to reach the level requirement. Ding reached the system's advancement requirement. Activating advancement mission, Dagger Training Ground. This mission has no time limit. Do you want to activate it? Dagger Training Ground? What was that? Yes. Tang In's vision blurred, and the scene changed instantly. He saw that he was on a platform that was about 1 square meter in size, surrounded by a brilliant nebula. It was very dreamy. Mission commencing 3, 2. The corner of Zhang Xian's eyes flickered, and a white light flashed. Tang In subconsciously turned his head to avoid it. A knife slid across his throat. Before Tang In could figure out, another dagger came from the front of the nebula map. Ding! Tang In bent his arm and flicked out his dagger to block the attack. Without a sound, 2 more small swords shot out. Ding, ding, Tang In felt a sharp pain in his chest. Looking down, he saw a black dagger pressing against his heart. Just now, the 2 small swords attracted his attention, and this black dagger took the opportunity to sneak an attack from the side. Bang! His body collapsed. Tang In appeared in the system space. Mission failed. Do you want to activate the mission? Tang In suddenly understood that the so-called Dagger Training Ground was to allow him to dodge or parry all the attacks on the high platform and survive. Yes, survive. It was that simple. However, it was not easy to do this. Tang In was no longer a rookie who had no foresight. He knew that the difficulty of this mission was quite high. If they were on a plane, Twain would have had some confidence in himself. He could still dodge some of the attacks that he could not block. However, on a platform that was at most 1 square meter in size, the space to dodge was only 2 small steps. This greatly increased the difficulty. However, since the conditions were set, the system would not bargain with him. Tang In could only bite the bullet and confirm it again. Mission commencing 3, 2, and am. Tang In quickly flicked out his dagger and knocked away a small sword that was stabbing at the back of his head from the side. Damn it, this mission was still alive? This made Tang In, who wanted to memorize the attack pattern, completely give up. Ding, ding, I dodge. Ouch. There was nothing under his feet. Mission failed. Do you want to start the mission? Yes. Damn. With the repeated failures of the mission, Tang Yin's confidence was hit again and again. He originally thought that his speed of drawing his dagger was fast enough. However, the repeated attacks on his heart and throat made him understand that he was still slow, too slow. Moreover, as more and more daggers were blocked, Tang Yin also found that the dreamy nebula map was so annoying. Because in the later stage, Tang Yin was dealing with the daggers coming from all directions. His mind was already very tense. However, the flickering nebula map was constantly interfering with his vision. Tang Yin was hit many times. It was during the flickering nebula map that the dagger successfully attacked. Damn it. Needless to say, Tang Yin failed again. You have to learn to trust your perception. The old butler, who was quietly holding a large book in the distance, suddenly said this. Trust my perception? Tang Yin was deep in thought. He entered the dagger training ground again. Bang! Mission failed. Do you want to start the mission? Idiot! The old butler's lips twitched. I'm asking you to trust your perception, not asking you to close your eyes. Who do you think you are? Tang Yin blushed. Then he felt wrong. He clearly remembered that he had seen in movies and novels where the protagonists would suddenly have an epiphany when they were being tortured to the point where it was unbearable to look at. Then they would close their eyes and suddenly have a burst of strength and character, beating their opponents to a pulp. Why didn't it work when it came to him? For the next 3 days, Tang Yin forgot about the library, Josiah, and Winston. He focused all his attention on the dagger training ground. Tang Yin couldn't remember how many times he had failed. He just kept on confirming and entering the training ground. If being abused was considered a talent, Tang Yin would undoubtedly have the highest value for it. Now, as long as he was in the dagger training ground, Tang Yin would be able to quickly enter the state, block, dodge, and be killed in an orderly manner. As the number of times he was killed increased, the time Tang Yin could hold on also became longer and longer. From the initial 10 seconds, 30 seconds, to close to 3 minutes now. From the perspective of a bystander, it was very easy to see Tang Yin's improvement. It was noon this day. On the small platform, Tang Yin transformed into a figure, moving and dodging between the dimensions. Cold gleams flashed nonstop, and amidst clanging sounds, many small swords and knives were scattered on the platform. In the surrounding nebula, there were countless hidden knives and swords, either from the front or in the dark, looking for openings to attack. The nebula flashed. Ding, ding, ding. Without any delay, Tang Yin expressionlessly knocked away 3 black daggers that were about to reach his throat, temple, and heart. This was a huge improvement. One had to know that Tang Yin had been defeated by this move N times. However, Tang Yin still had no joy on his face. He knew that a bigger test was coming. This was also the threshold that he had never succeeded in since he came here today. Suddenly, the nebula shone brightly. It's coming. Tang Yin leaned forward, his legs tightened, and his arms hung down naturally. He was like a cheetah that was ready to attack. In an instant, Tang Yin's eyes were full of knives and swords that were attacking him. He felt as if needles were pressing against his back, tingling and numbing. He knew that there were also many attacks behind him that he could not see. Squawk! Tang Yin's dry throat rolled out an unpleasant roar. Come on, I'm the king of this small area. All of you, get out of here. In an instant, Tang Yin's body swayed left and right. His figure was illusory, and he looked like a drunkard. However, if there was a careful person, he would be able to see that no matter how his body swayed, one of his toes was nailed to the same place like a compass. In this case, many of the knives and swords that were stabbing at him were dodged or collided with the knives and swords behind him. The two canceled each other out in a clanking sound. After dodging a round of attacks, Tang indecisively stretched out his dagger. Ding, ding, ding. Suddenly, like rain hitting a banana leaf, the cold light in front of him shone brightly. Faster, faster, faster. In the world of martial arts, there was nothing that could not be overcome. Only speed could not be overcome. Roar! The surrounding cold stars suddenly rose again. Perception, perception. Tang Yin followed his body's intuition and turned his body rapidly, constantly adjusting the cold light to the most powerful part of the attack. Occasionally, he would miss some, but he would dodge them in an instant. Very good. This is the feeling. Tang knew that the opportunity had come. At this time, he was undoubtedly in the best condition. Success or failure depended on this one move. Get out of here. Amidst the angry roar, the light of the knife rose again. Under the rotation of the flowing light, the attacking knives and swords were crushed into pieces. The broken pieces sparkled. In a moment, Tang's surroundings were cleared. Huff! Huff! However, before he could be happy, there was a sudden wind behind his head and his scalp was slightly numb. Impossible! Tang, who was scared out of his wits, immediately felt that there was a problem with his perception. There was obviously only one dagger in that direction, and he had already broken it. Where did this attack come from? But this slightly numb feeling could not be wrong. There must be something behind his head. He was not in a hurry to think about it. He took half a step forward, tilted his head, opened his mouth, and made a soft crunching sound. Puff! Amidst the clanking sound, Tang spat out a curved crescent blade from his mouth. Realization dawned on him. Tang was angry. Mother of Asterisk, you're really sinister. You even hit a boomerang. Luckily, I've practiced it before. Otherwise, wouldn't I have been tricked by you? As the boomerang was broken, the system's synthesized voice sounded. Ding! Congratulations to Assassin Tang for completing the advancement mission. Chapter 20. Ding! Congratulations to Assassin Tang for completing the advancement mission. Basic dagger upgraded to proficient. Rewarded with the innate skill haste. System upgrading, please wait. Ding! Novice Assassin system upgraded to Newbie Assassin. Blood Aura system officially activated. Skill tree system updated. Tang didn't really understand the series of synthesized system sounds. Fortunately, he had the old butler to ask, so he wasn't in a hurry. Tang just opened the assassin panel immediately. System level, new assassin code, Tang experience, 0/5000 blood aura, 450/1000 blood aura level. Level 1 special effect, elementary deterrence, increased title, evil dog's nemesis skill tree, layout, wilderness survival skills proficient, peak, normal skill, not learn hide, basic stealth proficient, haste, innate skill ghost, normal skill, not learn shadow stealth, normal skill, not learn disguise, basic disguise proficient, bone shrinking, normal skill, not learn thousand faces, normal skill, not learned killing skills, basic crossbow proficient, basic dagger proficient, chaotic flowers, normal skill, not learned empty kill, normal skill, not learned storm, normal skill, not learned status, heart like still water, innate skill killing intent, normal skill, not learned ghost body, normal skill, not learned annihilation of conscience, normal skill, not learned. The assassin panel now was much richer than before. In general, the biggest change was the blood aura level and some skills after the upgrade. In terms of basic skills, his highest level was the basic dagger, which had reached the proficient level. The second was the proficient stealth. Tang roughly scanned the assassin's panel from top to bottom and asked, Old Butler, what do you think is the thing that could be compared to magic and combat energy? Blood aura. Blood aura? Tang was puzzled. Didn't I have this before? The old butler said, it's officially open now. Level 1 blood chi layer. Elementary deterrence and increased weight. Elementary deterrence, passive skill. The more he killed, the stronger his killing intent. This killing intent could be used to intimidate his opponents. If you learn the killing intent in the status skill tree, you'll be able to target and control the direction of your killing intent and attack at a fixed point. As for the increase in strength, simply put, it is to cover the weapon with blood and chi. Like this. The old butler flipped his hand and revealed a dagger. Recite the word increase blood chi in your mind. The originally ordinary dagger was suddenly covered in a layer of bloody light. The old butler waved it casually, and with a hiss, a Z-shaped faint red light appeared out of thin air. The dagger's power will increase many times after being strengthened by blood energy. It won't be any weaker than the effect of fighting aura. What if it's magic? Tang immediately asked. He had never forgotten about revenge. This was also the main reason why he upgraded the system. Unfortunately, we don't have the advantage. Your blood chi is still too weak. It's not powerful enough to penetrate the magic shield. The old butler continued. Another thing to note is that the boost effect consumes 5 HP per second. Wait, consumes 5 HP? I have 450 HP now. Doesn't that mean 90 seconds? Tang In was depressed after calculating. Didn't that mean he had to transform into Ultraman? If he didn't have enough energy, he would have to leave Earth? 90 seconds is already the most ideal state. You won't be able to use any other skills during this time. The old butler said, "As for those skills, I'm sorry. You haven't reached the learning standard for most of them. For example, this dagger skill, Flurry." Tang In was stunned. He quickly opened the skill tree and read it in detail. Flurry, normal skill, not learned. Skill requirement, basic dagger mastery. The total value of blood and chi reached 1,000 points. Tang In looked at the other skills. Void Kill required 2,000 points of blood and Storm required 5,000. 5,000 points of blood and chi? F*CK, are you robbing me? Tang In scratched his head gloomily. He felt that he was happy for nothing. He couldn't learn any of these skills that sounded awesome just from their names. There's nothing I can use? Tang In said, confused. There is. The skill you just received is Haste. You can use this. Haste, talent skill, not upgradable. Traverse 10 feet in a breath. Skill lasts for 10 seconds. Cooldown time is 1 minute. Consumes 100 HP. That's it? Nothing else? Tang In was in tears. Please, I want combat skills. Don't give me these support skills. This is the only one that can be used immediately. But there's a very practical skill. If you want to use it, you can learn it quickly. Hey, why didn't you say so earlier? What is it? Tang In was overjoyed. The old butler said, Obliterate Conscience. It's in the status skill tree. Tang In quickly flipped through the assassin panel and muttered, F*CK. What kind of stupid name is this? Obliterate Conscience. Normal skill, not learned. Skill requirement. Kill a target under 1 year old or reach 10,000 HP to activate this skill. 1 year old? F*CK me. Perverted system. You really have no conscience at all. How could you do this? Tang In showed 2 big middle fingers to the system and closed the status skill tree without hesitation. The old butler shrugged and said regretfully, At your current stage, this skill is very powerful. It can make your strength take a qualitative leap. Stop. I don't want to hear this. Okay. The old butler spread his hands. Tang In estimated his gains from this upgrade. The main thing was that he had opened a new blood system and obtained a talent skill. Especially with the activation of the blood system, he was no longer so afraid of the magic and do chi of the other world. After obtaining a new ability, he naturally had to master it as soon as possible. After picking up the dagger again, Tang In vaguely felt that the dagger seemed to have a mysterious relationship with him. It felt like the dagger was an extension of his arm. This was probably the effect of the basic dagger at the proficient level. The dagger swung freely, as if it was his arm, without any hindrance. With a thought, a bloody light instantly covered the entire dagger. Ja! Tang In shouted and slit the throat of the mannequin that he usually practiced with the dagger. Beep, unqualified. Tang In looked at the mannequin with its head cut off and was speechless. The power had increased a lot, but he still needed time to get used to it. Fortunately, using skills in the space did not consume blood energy, so he could practice often. Then, Tang In experienced the feeling of being as fast as lightning. What kind of concept was it to travel 10 feet in a breath? It was more than 30 meters in a second. Suddenly, figures flew in the space. Haha, I'm going to participate in the Olympics like this. Flying people are all trash in front of me. What? Chapter 21. Late autumn, morning, more than 10 miles north of Lion City. The dew on the lush pine and cypress trees had yet to dry. Rows of black iron fences could be seen in the gaps between the trees. Outside the pine and cypress trees, carriages would pass by occasionally. Perhaps it was due to the environment, but the sound of the horses' hooves sounded solemn and dignified. Tang got off the carriage at the iron gate. There was a stone tablet beside the gate with the words, Lion City Cyan Forest Cemetery. There was a registration and information counter at the entrance of the cemetery. Tang walked over and asked, "Hello, I have a friend who was buried here about 3 days ago. His name is Bart. I would like to know where he is buried." "Wait a moment. May I know your name?" "I'm Arthur." The administrator wrote Arthur's name on the register. Then he flipped open a book and checked a few pages before saying, "Your friend is buried in the Western District, number 87. "Okay, thank you. You're welcome." Just like the fake name Arthur, Tangen's current appearance was that of a middle-aged man with a sallow face. The old butler had said that assassins would never show their true appearance during their missions. After entering the cemetery, Tang casually glanced around and walked towards the Western District according to the signs. In this world, there were new lives born every second. Similarly, there were lives dying every second. Therefore, there was never a lack of people in the cemetery. Life was neither expensive nor cheap. However, the difference in the place of birth determined the difference in their fate. Similarly, when these lives with different fates died, the way they were buried would naturally be different. The Western District of Cyan Forest Cemetery was the burial area for commoners. The tombstones here were of the same size and style. The distance between two tombstones was very narrow. Looking at the graveyard, it seemed very crowded. If you want to build a better cemetery, you don't want to be too close to your neighbors. Then, please come to the Northern District. This place can satisfy your wish. Of course, the price will be much more expensive. As for the Southern District, it was the Martyrs' Cemetery. Some soldiers and officers who sacrificed their lives for the country would be buried there. The most luxurious cemetery was the one in the Eastern District. However, no matter how rich you were, you would not be able to enter here because this was the burial area for nobles. Every time a noble died, the Eastern District would become very lively. Needless to say, the extravagant arrangements would be made. It was a funeral, after all. It was not only to mourn for the dead, but also to give glory to the living. This was true no matter which space-time or world it was. While his thoughts were running wild, Tang arrived at the West District. People gathered in groups of 2s and 3s in front of the tombstone, whispering and sobbing endlessly. The towering cypress trees in the surroundings temporarily blocked out the sun rising from the east, dyeing the place with a hint of gray. Tang walked all the way to tomb 87. The words on the tombstone were simple. It was Bart's tomb, as well as the time of birth and death. Compared to the tombstone next to it, Bart's tombstone had an additional sentence. "May thou return to the embrace of the God of light." Usually, a tombstone with this sentence engraved on it meant that the deceased was a believer of the God of light. Of course, there were exceptions. If you had the money to invite a priest to help you with your soul after death, the priest would also help you engrave this sentence. Tang exhaled and placed a bouquet of white chrysanthemums in front of the tombstone. If Father New York was not human, then Bart, nicknamed Violent Bear, was his first target in a different world, and it was a close-range assassination. Of course, although there were some feelings in his heart, Tang didn't come here early in the morning to pay respects to Violent Bear. This would be too hypocritical. This time, he came here because it was on the way. His main purpose was to monitor the second target. Although he was familiar with the effect of leveling up in the space, it was more appropriate to test its practicality in practice. "Hey, this is Violent Bear's tomb." When a group of people who looked unfriendly passed by Tang one of them casually saw Bart's tombstone. The group of people stopped when they heard that. The leader was a thin man with a pointy mouth and monkey-like cheeks. He carefully looked at the tombstone and said, "Bart, well, it's Violent Bear. I drank with him 10 days ago. I didn't expect." The man sighed with emotion. When he saw Tang standing at the side, he cupped his hands and smiled. "Brother, are you from the Axe Gang? Tang In blinked and cupped his hands. Yes. Are you Moya from the Green Wolf Gang? Oh, brother, you know me. Well, I heard Boss Violent Bear mention you. He said you're resourceful and he admires you very much. Of course I know you. It's written in the information. Moya, 5 feet tall, pointy mouth, monkey-like cheeks, thin body. A small leader of the Green Wolf Gang, often appearing at South Harbor Pier 66. I was going to look for you later, but I didn't expect you to come to me. Really, there is no door to hell, but you come to me. Haha, Brother Violent Bear, you flatter me. Of course, Moya didn't know the situation. He laughed in a high-pitched voice. I just came up with some ideas. How can I compare with Brother Violent Bear's strength? By the way, brother, I really envy the welfare of the Axe Gang. Oh, really? Tang In answered vaguely. Moya said, of course. We are small fries in the business of licking blood. Maybe one day we will be chopped to death on the street. If we die, we will be buried in a thin coffin. But the Axe Gang is good. When Violent Bear was buried, you specially invited a priest to help him pass on. This matter has been spread in the underworld. We really envy you. Oh, this matter. It's quite good. It's a contribution to the gang, haha. Moya seemed to sigh with emotion. So the welfare of the Axe Gang is really good. Brother the boss, a strong man next to him, reminded him. Oh, right. Today is the death anniversary of our former boss. It's inconvenient to talk more. Brother, you can come to Pier 66 to drink with me in the future. Okay, sure. Tang In cupped his hands and smiled. I will definitely look for you. But when it comes to drinking, you'd better look for Violent Bear. The 5 men of the Green Wolf Gang also cupped their hands and left. As they walked further away, a voice came. Boss, are you familiar with Violent Bear? Familiar, my ass. We just drank a bit. That brute with brute strength. Moya's tone was full of disdain. I heard that Violent Bear was chopped to death by the former gambler at the pier. That's right. Violent Bear took the order to kill Gambler, but he was killed instead. So I often teach you that brute strength is unreliable. The key is the brain. Yes, yes, boss is wise. Although they had lowered their voices, Ting In, who had been trained in this field, could still hear them clearly. He was amused when he heard them. They had always thought that Violent Bear was killed by the gambler, but this was also good. After all, it was not a good thing for a killer to be too famous. Since he had bumped into the target, it was naturally inappropriate to follow him. The best way now was to ask him out for a drink in 2 days and then get him drunk. Then he would be able to kill him easily. Thinking of this, Tang In walked down the west cemetery and walked towards the entrance of the cemetery. The sun that was covered by the pine trees had already risen in the east, making the gloomy cemetery seem much brighter. At this moment, the pedestrians in front of Tang In became restless and began to disperse to the sides. Tang In squinted and was stunned. He saw a weirdo wearing flowery clothes, long hair, and a strange mask on his face skipping along the aisle. The strange mask was full of messy red and white symbols. At the corners of his eyes, there seemed to be 2 drops of blood dripping with red paint. Coupled with the blood-red eyes behind the mask, it looked extremely strange. Encountering such a weirdly dressed person, the pedestrians naturally made way subconsciously. Dida, Dida, Dida. The weirdo was not polite. He chanted an inexplicable rhythm and shook his fingers. His footsteps were light as he walked in the middle of the aisle, as if he was dancing. Seeing the weirdo approach, Tang In also moved to the side. Unexpectedly, when the person passed by, he tilted his head and looked at Tang In's face. The bright red lips under the mask suddenly grinned. Tang In's body stiffened, not only because the smile was really ugly, but he also felt that the other party seemed to have seen through his disguise. Dida, Dida, Dida. After the weirdo smiled, he continued to walk towards the North Cemetery. It seemed that the smile just now was just inadvertent. Chapter 22. In the northern district of Qinglin Cemetery, the Green Wolf Gang had set up a canopy and were holding a memorial ceremony for their former gang leader. The Green Wolf Gang was a medium-sized gang in Lion City. Their members were similar to the Axe Gang, with hundreds of them. After the current gang leader finished his eulogy, The gang leaders came forward to bow and offer flowers. Yo, isn't this Boss Moya? The ceremony has begun. Why are you only here now? Moya had just arrived at the Northern District's entrance. Once he heard that the ceremony had begun, he panicked. This was a rare opportunity to show his face in front of the gang's higher-ups. How could he miss it? Just as he was about to run towards the ceremony, a lackey beside him said in surprise, "Yeah, where did this stupid bird come from?" Moya subconsciously turned his head to look and saw a strange person wearing a mask and colorful flowery clothes walking towards him with every step. He's coming this way," Moya said impatiently. "He's just a lunatic. Just send him away." With that, he ran towards the ceremony. Flowery clothes, mask? Why did he have an impression? This lunatic's outfit was too unique. Moya felt like he had heard of it somewhere before. "Stupid bird, this isn't a place you should be. Get lost." "Hey, I'm talking to you. The one with the zebra tattoo on your body. Get lost. Drip, drip, drip." "Yo, you're forcing me to fight?" Hearing this, Moya's heart skipped a beat. He turned around. A brawny man clenched his fists and cracked his knuckles. He grinned as he walked towards the masked man who was walking towards him without a care. "Take this." The brawny man threw a punch at the man's face. The brawny man's punch missed. The man jumped left and right and dodged it. He continued walking towards the ceremony. On the other hand, the brawny man couldn't stop in time and almost fell to the ground. "Huh." The surrounding Green Wolf gang members roared with laughter. "You're asking for death." The brawny man glared and threw a punch at the back of the man's head. The brawny man was so angry that he didn't care about the severity of his attack. If a normal person was hit by this punch, they would be dizzy at best and die at worst. F***CK. Huh? Obviously, the burly man missed again, and the strange man jumped to the other side. "Haha, can you do it? If you can't, we'll help you deal with it." "Ha! Shut up." The brawny man's face was flushed red, and he was panting like an ox. Both of his fists were like drum beats as they smashed towards the strange man. Straight punches, uppercuts, leg sweeps. But no matter how hard the brawny man tried, he always missed by a little bit. However, gradually, the mocking laughter in the surroundings became fewer and fewer. Everyone could see that something was wrong. Dodging the attack once could be attributed to luck, but in the current situation, it was clear that he was just playing around. F***CK. They are here to cause trouble. Everyone, attack together. Seeing this, Moya decisively ordered. At this time, the people who were still outside were all low-level members of the gang. They were not qualified to go in and pay their respects. Although they weren't under Moya's command, Moya was the only small leader here. Therefore, everyone followed his orders and surrounded him. The passageway was only so big, with a few brawny men surrounding him. The strange man had no place to hide. "Let's see how you're going to dodge." Seeing everyone surround him, the brawny man who had punched empty air suddenly laughed and pounced towards the strange man. "Die." Approved. The strange man opened his arms as if to hug the brawny man. "Caca." A hair-raising sound was heard, and the brawny man's head drooped down weakly. The surrounding people looked at the hand that seemed to be gently caressing the brawny man's throat, and their hearts turned cold. Enemy attack. "Quick, take him down, kill him." After a short silence, the Green Wolf gang members were enraged. Too arrogant. He actually dared to kill under their noses. Clang, clang. A blade flashed. Hee. Ha. The masked man laughed like an owl. He opened his hands, and two colorful daggers appeared. Ding. Ouch, catch him. No, it's too fast. Get out of the way. I caught him. Ah. It was a chaotic scene. Dozens of brawny men were piled up in the narrow passageway, and their screams were endless. Finally, after leaving behind a dozen brawny men who were rolling on the ground and wailing, the masked man slowly walked forward. The brawny men who were still blocking the way looked at each other and held the hilts of their weapons tightly as they retreated. Ghostface. He's Ghostface. Seeing the two unique, colorful daggers, Moya finally reacted and cried out in fear. Ghostface. Lion City's #1 assassin, Ghostface. The crowd lost their courage in Moya's terrified voice. Clang, clang, intimidated by the name. Some of the gang members dropped their weapons on the ground. The people inside the venue finally realized that something was wrong and walked out with a pale-faced middle-aged man. Ghostface tilted his head and looked at the group of people. He raised his dagger and pointed it at the pale-faced middle-aged man and grinned. The dagger in his left hand made a singing gesture, and the meaning was self-evident. Hiss! Ghostface's target is the gang leader. The Green Wolf gang members' expressions changed, and the pale-faced middle-aged man's face turned even paler. How dare you kill him? A black-clothed old man in the crowd shouted angrily. The gang members who were closest to Ghostface immediately complained in their hearts and hesitated, not daring to move forward. Don't be afraid, he's alone. We have more than 100 people here. We can crush him. Follow me and kill. As soon as he finished speaking, the black-clothed old man pulled out a broadsword, and a green armor appeared around his body. He charged forward like thunder. Under the black-clothed old man's lead, the surrounding gang members shouted and slashed at Ghostface. TSK Tisk. Interesting. Ghostface's body swayed, and the ordinary gang members only saw a blur in front of their eyes before they were out of the encirclement. Hit! The black-clothed old man who rushed over shouted. Green light flowed on the broadsword on his back, and he slashed at Ghostface. Too slow. With a sigh, Ghostface disappeared on the spot like a wisp of green smoke. In an instant, he passed by the black-clothed old man and went straight for the pale-faced middle-aged man. Stop him, kill him. The pale-faced middle-aged man was anxious, and he quickly ordered the surrounding gang members to surround and kill him. Every gang had some core members, and these people were the backbone of a gang. They usually had all kinds of talents, and, of course, the most important thing for a gang was to be loyal. Following the gang leader's shout, a dozen big men stood in front of Ghostface, holding all kinds of shining weapons. Kill! These people naturally wouldn't be like the ordinary gang members, and make a mistake like accidentally killing one of their own. Boom! In an instant, Ghostface, who was rushing over, was drowned in fighting energy of various colors. Did he kill him? I can't see clearly. With so many hall masters attacking, he should be dead. Huh! The pale-faced middle-aged man suddenly roared behind him. The dozen martial artists who released their fighting energy were shocked, and they hurriedly turned their heads to look. They saw the glowing short sword in the pale-faced middle-aged man's hand being knocked away, and his body was wounded in more than a dozen places. Fortunately, there were no fatal injuries. However, a brightly colored dagger was quietly placed on his neck at this moment. Then, a smiling face with a scary mask appeared behind the middle-aged man. Stop! Spare him! Everyone, don't move! The Green Wolf gang members cried out. The previous gang leader had been assassinated, and they had lost a lot of face. If the newly elected gang leader was also assassinated, the Green Wolf gang would become the laughing stock of the other gangs in Rhine City. Wait, I can pay double the price to buy my life back, the pale-faced middle-aged man said anxiously. If that's the case, then I'll have to think about it. There's a chance. The pale-faced middle-aged man, who was just trying to make a Hail Mary effort, was instantly overjoyed. Okay, take your time to think about it. You can name the price. Then you have to be good. Ghostface looked into the long tent and said, Can I go in and pay my respects? Sure, the pale-faced middle-aged man replied, baffled. Ghostface carried the pale-faced middle-aged man with one hand and walked into the venue. When he passed by a middle-aged man with a sallow complexion, Ghostface suddenly stopped and smiled. Can I borrow a bouquet of flowers? The middle-aged man handed him a bouquet of white chrysanthemums with a strange expression. Thank you. The Green Wolf gang members looked at each other and followed closely behind. When they reached the tombstone, Ghostface casually tossed the pale-faced middle-aged man aside. He crossed his hands in front of his abdomen and bowed 3 times in a strict posture, appearing very sincere. This made the leaders of the Green Wolf gang feel as if they were facing a great enemy. Could it be that our former gang leader was friends with Ghostface? After bowing, Ghostface took 2 steps forward and presented the white chrysanthemums. During this time, the pale-faced, middle-aged man's eyes kept flashing. He was clearly struggling with whether he should take the opportunity to escape. However, he did not dare to move in the end. TSK, TSK. I remember that when I killed you, you asked me who the client was. Ghostface suddenly began to speak to the tombstone. Based on professional ethics, of course, it's not convenient for me to tell you. Also, I didn't know at the time. What was going on? The Green Wolf gang members were confused when they saw Ghostface talking to himself. However, they were immediately shocked by what Ghostface said. The former gang leader was killed by Ghostface. However, I've taken on another mission recently, and I finally know who the client is. I purposely chose to send him down here so that you can take your revenge. TSK, you don't have to thank me. I was just passing by. Hearing this, the pale-faced, middle-aged man's expression changed drastically. He shouted, "Kill him." After shouting, he took the opportunity to leap back, wanting to retreat to the gang member's side. Help! Whoosh! Ghostface suddenly appeared beside the pale-faced, middle-aged man who was leaping back in midair. He lifted him back to the tombstone. You're not obedient. I decided to send you down in advance. Spare. Puffed. The pale-faced, middle-aged man looked at the dagger in his heart in despair. He twitched a few times, then fell silent and did not move. Gang leader. Brothers, kill him to avenge our gang leader. Kill. Apart from a few hall masters who stood in place in a daze, no one knew what they were thinking. The rest of the gang members rushed toward Ghostface like a tide. TSK, TSK. Boring. Let's go. Ghostface turned into a flowery shadow and moved through the crowd, rushing toward the periphery. Stop him. Get out of the way. Are you blind? Why are you attacking me? Ghostface's speed was really amazing. Such a large group of strong men did not do anything except make the scene more chaotic. Soon, Ghostface left after leaving behind a dozen unlucky people who were accidentally injured by their own people. When the situation calmed down, the remaining deputy gang leaders and a few hall masters looked at each other, speechless. After a while, the dark-faced old man sighed and said, "How are the casualties?" Reporting to the deputy gang leader. 2 are dead and more than 30 are injured. Take the injured away for treatment. Bury the dead in the nearest cemetery. From which 2 died? Emoya was in charge of the dock. The other one was his underling. Check if these 2 have any relatives. If they do, send some money over. Okay. Then gang leader. What about this person? The dark-faced old man looked at the pale-faced, middle-aged man's corpse and said hatefully, "This kind of disloyal and unjust traitor. Of course we'll drag him out and feed him to the dogs. P.S. 2 things. 1. First, bow to thank the book friend for the unanswerable tip. 2. Today I saw an old woman in her 60s on the bus. She was trying hard to read a book with her glasses. I inadvertently glanced over and saw Avon, Kite, Murderous Aura, and something like that. My heart suddenly moved. I took a closer look. As expected, it was the heavenly demon Tan. Sigh, it seems that online novels are not necessarily exclusive to young people. Finally, as usual, I'm asking for your collection and recommendation. Chapter 23. What should a top-notch assassin look like? Before coming into contact with the assassin system, Tangen's impression of an assassin should be one who wore a windbreaker, wore sunglasses, and carried a guitar case as he walked around on the rooftop. After the target appeared, he would pull the trigger coldly. Yes, cold-blooded. How can an assassin not be cold-blooded when he was in the business of taking people's lives? However, after coming into contact with the assassin system, Tangen had a new understanding of assassin from the old butler. It didn't matter if the old butler was just a system program. It couldn't be denied that he was an excellent assassin. Moreover, he was the best of the best. The old butler seemed to be indifferent towards killing people. To him, being an assassin was just a job, just like being a cashier in a convenience store. You give me money, I give you goods. The only difference was the contents of the goods. Compared to the old butler's indifference, Ghostface, who was known as the #1 assassin in Lion City, was undoubtedly extremely arrogant. In broad daylight, he came casually. Under everyone's gaze, he stabbed the target's heart with a dagger, leaving the wounded on the ground, and finally left. What kind of lunatic was this? With that ability, wouldn't it be easier to just slit the throat in the dark? However, it was undeniable that this kind of arrogant assassination was very satisfying. It gave Tang In, who was watching from the side, a deep stimulation. So much so that he took advantage of the chaos to shoot out his dagger and kill Moya, who was hiding at the side. Tang In didn't know if his actions were to prove something or for other reasons. Fortunately, the scene was chaotic enough. This debt should be pinned on Ghostface's head. After succeeding, Tang In quickly left the scene. On the carriage, he cleaned up his disguise and changed into an inconspicuous gray coat. When Ghostface borrowed the flower, Tang In was sure that his disguise was seen through. After all, it could be a coincidence if it happened once, but it was inevitable if it happened twice. Since it was the first time they met, Tang In didn't know if Ghostface, who looked a little crazy, would do something as boring as stalking him. He might as well revert to his original appearance, which was safer. Perhaps he had fooled Ghostface's eyes, or perhaps Ghostface did not follow him. Tang In's horse carriage entered Lion City through the north gate after an hour. That car stopped. Just as Tang In breathed a sigh of relief, a woman in a blended red dress waved her arm to greet him. Tang In was stunned for a moment, and then he realized that the other party had taken it as a carriage for passengers. Thus, he waved his hand, indicating that he would not take any passengers. You still dare to not stop? Who would have thought that the woman would actually run to the front of the carriage with her arms wide open? F***CK. Tang In reacted quickly. He pulled the reins and stopped the horse before its nose touched the woman. F***CK, are you crazy? Tang In broke out in a cold sweat. I'm not a taxi. Why can't I refuse to take you? Don't you have any manners? Your horse almost hit me, and you still dare to scold me? The woman was also frightened by the huge horse's head. She argued with a red face. Tang In was speechless. You were the one who ran up here on your own accord. Could it be that there were also scammers in the other world? You have nothing to say, right? Forget it. I'm in a good mood today, so I won't argue with you. Our horse carriage is broken. You can take us. With that, the woman was about to open the door. Tang In hurriedly said, Wait, my horse carriage doesn't take passengers. The woman looked at Tang On with disdain. Don't worry, I won't shortchange you. Tang? A familiar voice came from behind. Tang In turned around and saw a young girl in a white dress crossing the road and walking towards them. Behind her, a luxurious horse carriage was tilted to one side. Shia, you know this despicable coachman? The woman in the red dress asked in surprise. Tang In rolled his eyes and waved his hand. Hi, Josiah. Hi, Tang. Josiah, who was wearing a white dress and looked like a lotus flower, pursed his lips and smiled. Betsy, don't say that. Tang is a very great person. He's the thoughtful Tang you were talking about. You didn't get the wrong person, did you? Betsy pointed at Tang In with an incredulous expression. Betsy. Okay, I won't say it. Seeing that Josiah was a little angry, Betsy hugged her arm and smiled. Tang, I'm really sorry. Betsy just likes to joke. This be *TCH. Tang In cursed in his heart, touched his nose and said, It's okay. Josiah, we're going to party outside the city, but the horse carriage broke down. Can you please send us off? Well, okay. Josiah was an acquaintance. Seeing that she had spoken, Tang In had to agree and let them get in the carriage. Tang In turned the carriage around and went out of the city gate again. Tang, why didn't you go to the library these days? Oh, I had something important to do recently. Betsy, what important things can you have? You're just going to see someone off. Tang In's face darkened. Shut up. How dare you talk to me like that? I'm a noble. I'm the owner. The location of the party was not far, only 5 or 6 miles outside the city. Of course, it was not in the direction of the cemetery. Under the guidance of Josiah, the carriage soon stopped in front of a very magnificent manor. Thank you, Tang. Josiah walked out of the carriage gracefully and thanked Tang In. "You're welcome. Why are you thanking him? This carriage is really uncomfortable. There isn't even a cushion." It had to be said that in this world, other than love at first sight, there were also people who became enemies at first sight. Betsy and Tang In obviously belonged to the latter, and the two of them had been mocking each other on the way. Tang In relied on all kinds of derogatory slang that he learned from the internet in the future to make Becky so angry that she almost suffered internal injuries from holding back her anger. "Do you still need a cushion? Your skin is so thick." "Tang In, I'll kill you." Betsy's face was red, and she was about to rush up with bared fangs and brandish her claws. "Okay, Tang, stop talking." Josiah stopped Betsy and said helplessly, "Betsy, someone is coming, a lady. I'm telling you, I'm not done with you." Betsy saw a group of people coming over at the entrance of the manor, so she quickly tidied up her clothes and makeup. However, she still did not stop threatening. "No, Chicha." Josiah and Betsy were suddenly petrified, and they stared at Tang In dumbfoundedly. "You." Tang In lowered his head and said in a gentle tone, "You're a noble lady. I'm just a coachman. There's no future between us. You'd better forget about me." The group of people who surrounded them suddenly froze in place with strange expressions. They looked at Betsy and then looked at Tang In. The scene fell into a strange silence for a moment. "I'm going to kill you." Chapter 24. I'm going to kill you. Looking at everyone's ambiguous expressions, Betsy instantly went crazy. She understood the aristocratic circle too well. If this kind of love story between a coachman and an aristocratic lady were to be confirmed, it would probably spread throughout the entire Lion City within a day. A few weeks later, her name might be mentioned in the northernmost borders of the empire. Josiah didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he hugged Betsy, who was baring her fangs and brandishing her claws. "Tang, stop joking around." Tang In spread out his hands and didn't say anything else. The group of young men and women at the manor's entrance finally came back to their senses. The ladies all went up to help persuade Betsy, who had gone crazy. The remaining people looked at Tang In with some hesitation. The aristocratic circle in Lion City was only so big. There was basically no problem of not knowing each other. To be able to come together with Josiah and Betsy, he should also be an aristocrat. However, Tang In did indeed look unfamiliar. Moreover, judging from his attire, could he really be a coachman? But was there such a daring coachman? They soon got an answer to their guesses. Someone got the information from Betsy that this guy was really a coachman. A coachman who dared to flirt with an aristocratic lady? He was really something. For a moment, these aristocratic young men were speechless toward Tang In. "Why are you all gathered at the entrance?" "Shia, you're here." A slightly excited voice rang out from the manor's entrance. Tang In's heart skipped a beat, and he narrowed his eyes to take a look. It was another familiar face. With his gold-trimmed lapel jacket and his handsome face, Winston had clearly put in a lot of effort into dressing up today, appearing very spirited. "Since you're here, come in. This time around, I've specially invited a great harp master to play for our gathering to liven things up." Under everyone's consolation, Betsy finally calmed down. Hearing Winston's greeting, her quick-witted eyes rolled, and she suddenly said to Tang In, "Hey, do you want to go in with us to take a look?" "In?" Josiah looked at Betsy suspiciously and whispered, "What are you up to?" "What?" "Dunn is your friend, so he's naturally my friend. What's wrong with bringing a friend to broaden his horizons?" Betsy pretended to be wronged. Tang In looked at Becky's expression, which resembled a fox entering a chicken coop, and knew that this girl was up to no good. However, when he saw Winston's countenance changing slightly, he smiled and said, "Sure. I like to see what a gathering of aristocrats is like." Then let's go in." Betsy couldn't wait to drag Winston inside. Tang In pursed his lips and entered the manor with Josiah. He naturally didn't attend the gathering to see what tricks Betsy was up to. His main goal was Winston. Previously, when he had been tailed by someone at the hotel, The result of his countertailing was precisely the clan manner Winston was in. In the assassin's profession, the importance of one's true identity was self-evident. If Tang didn't wish to end up as a street rat, then it was very necessary to nip some disasters in the bud. Betsy, who was moving forward, pulled Winston along and mumbled something to him. In just a short while, they had shaken off the crowd by a large margin. When they passed by a front courtyard, Betsy disappeared without a trace. After turning into a corridor, all of a sudden, "Ha go! Woof, woof, woof! Ah! Be careful!" Amidst the incessant screams of women, two huge dogs with shiny black fur and muscular bodies suddenly darted out. Since this happened so suddenly, and they were at a corner, everyone watched in a daze as the huge dogs pounced toward Tang. "Waiting for me here? This lass is quite black-hearted." Tang stood on the spot expressionlessly, bending his knees slightly and wanting to jump away. He could even dodge the dagger that was thrusting toward him, let alone these two dogs. If it wasn't for the fact that he was afraid of exposing his identity, Tang dared to guarantee that these two dogs would be nailed to death by the dagger he flung out when they got close. Of course, in the eyes of outsiders, Tang looked like he was in a daze right now, and it wouldn't be long before he was about to be bitterly kissed by the dogs. "Stop, sob." Just as everyone was about to close their eyes, unable to bear to watch, the two huge dogs that were charging over suddenly came to a halt. They tucked their tails between their legs, whimpered, and retreated dejectedly. Awkward silence. "Stop, stop, stop." Betsy looked at the scene before her and mumbled subconsciously. Everyone also had their mouths agape. "Betsy." After a while, Josiah took in a breath and frowned, appearing a little angry. "You're too willful." "Oh." Winston said that it's fine. Moreover, didn't he call out to them? Betsy came back to her senses and explained softly. Everyone understood. They knew that Betsy had done all this to scare that coachman. At the thought of this, everyone turned their gazes toward Tang, only to discover that the latter was standing on the spot expressionlessly. It seemed that he was given quite a scare. How pitiful! Tang was squinting and looking at Winston, who was standing in the distance with an astonished look on his face. When the vicious dogs attacked earlier, Tang had seen Winston wave his hand slightly. He hadn't paid much attention to it back then. However, now that he combined it with Betsy's words, he understood that the person who had instructed the huge dogs to attack was Winston. Betsy was merely being used by him. Those two huge dogs were Winston's pets, so Betsy wouldn't be able to call out to them. As for the reason why the huge dogs had retreated, Tang had also thought of it. Vicious Dog's nemesis. With his title, ordinary guard dogs would keep a distance from them. This was the first title Tang had obtained after killing the guard dogs 10 times consecutively in the dimensional game. He hadn't expected that such a useless title would be used here. Although it had been a daunting experience, Tang's killing intent grew even stronger. If it had been an ordinary person who had been bitten on the neck or other vital parts by these two huge dogs, how would they still be alive? After this episode, Betsy appeared to be a little scared. The corners of her lips moved, as if she was preparing to apologize to Tang. However, when Tang saw her getting closer, he walked to the side and ignored her. This made Betsy feel aggrieved and resentful. She couldn't bring herself to apologize. A short moment later, Winston finally led everyone into the gathering hall. Soft carpet, elegant string music, exquisite cutlery, delicious desserts. It was true that aristocrats' gatherings were very enjoyable. As it was just an ordinary gathering, everyone appeared to be very casual. They held their wine glasses and looked for people to clink and chat, exchanging recent interesting news. There were also people who liked money who took the opportunity to talk about business cooperation. Of course, more people gathered around some beautiful aristocratic young ladies. Gatherings like this were held almost every day in the aristocratic circle. The aristocrats called this a social gathering. Of course, no one knew how much social experience they would get. However, after the gathering, there would be quite a number of young men and women who got along well and would find a secluded place to have a good chat. Josiah and Betsy, The two unmarried and extremely beautiful aristocratic young ladies were naturally the focus of everyone's attention. The two of them were surrounded by many young nobles whose hormones were bursting out of their bodies. Tang naturally wouldn't join in the fun. Right now, he was holding a wine glass and strolling around as if he was observing the exquisite decorations in the hall. Everyone knew about Tang An's identity as a coachman. The aristocrats' upbringing made it so that they wouldn't show any disgust toward Tang In. Of course, it was impossible for them to take the initiative to befriend him. Some of the less shrewd aristocratic young men couldn't help but twitch their lips when they saw Tang In strolling around. A country bumpkin will always be a country bumpkin. He hasn't seen much of the world. He must be memorizing some things so that he can brag about it to others. Right now, Tang In was indeed memorizing some things. Of course, it wasn't the decorations in the cupboards. It was the environment here, as well as the situation outside the hall. The Dirk family's manor had tight security and wasn't a good place to make a move. If he could investigate this place clearly, it would be a good choice for an assassination location. Right now, Winston was standing tall and straight next to Josiah, trying to please him. How would he know that he had let in an assassin who was choosing a grave for him? Chapter 25. The gathering continued. Amidst the gentle music, servants in neat uniforms shuttled back and forth among the guests with wine trays in their hands. Noble youths would occasionally raise their wine cups and drink with others. This was a scene that often appeared in noble gatherings. It was no wonder that an old earl had sighed softly. The so-called life of a noble was mostly to kill time by clinking glasses with each other. Clap, clap, clap. Winston suddenly clapped his hands twice. Beautiful ladies and handsome gentlemen, please be quiet. Seeing that everyone had turned their gazes over, Winston said with satisfaction, "Next is the theme of this gathering. Let's invite our Lion City's Harpmaster, Mr. Diamond, to play for us. Everyone, please welcome him." Clap, clap, clap from everyone's enthusiastic reaction. This Mr. Diamond was undoubtedly very popular among the noble youths. Amidst the applause, a rather charming middle-aged man with long curly hair walked out from the side hall and bowed to everyone. After the ceremony, Diamond pressed his hands together and the applause gradually stopped. Moments later, a burst of light and lively music poured out from Diamond's fingers. Winston seemed to have put in a lot of effort. Right now, he was pointing at Diamond's harp and explaining something to Josiah in a soft voice. The people around him kept nodding, seeming to agree with his point of view. Tang In was a layman when it came to music and naturally didn't understand what was being said. He only felt that the tune was very coherent and sounded very comfortable. This music is the Love God chapter? Winston really put in a lot of effort. A noble youth beside Tang In raised his cup and laughed. Of course, this Josiah is quite good-looking. Although his family is only a baron without land, he himself is a novice magus. From this point of view, if the two of them really get together, Winston's family will definitely benefit. Yeah, the identity of a magus really makes people envious. A noble youth with freckles on his face sighed, then asked doubtfully, "But Winston is only the eldest son of Viscount Delk's family. How did he get the upper hand?" "You don't know, but the Delk family and the Crowley family have a history to begin with. Later on, the Crowley family wasn't good at business and fell, so the two families didn't interact much. However, as Josiah's identity as a magician was verified, the two families started to have frequent contact with each other again. Winston was naturally in a favorable position. So that's how it is. This kid's luck is really not bad. It seems like the Delco family's status is going to rise again." "That's right." Everyone agreed. "TSK shallow. You guys only see the surface and don't know the crux of the matter." At this moment, a gloomy-looking youth suddenly opened his mouth and said, "Oh, what other profound insights were there? Why don't you tell us so that we can broaden our horizons?" The young man's words were rather impolite, and someone mocked him back. The gloomy youth looked at the person who replied with disdain, "Tell me, what is the most important thing in Lion City?" The thing I'm most concerned about. The freckled young man said. No. The gloomy young man patted his head and said weakly, it's expanding the wharf. Oh, so it's about that. I heard that Southport is going to expand 24 docks. But what does this have to do with the Delco family? It didn't in the past, but it's hard to say now. The young man said, everyone knows about the benefits of the wharf. It's an assembly line to produce gold coins. When Southport was just built, wasn't the great chaos because of fighting over the ownership of the wharf? Seeing that everyone was engrossed in his words, the young man's vanity was greatly satisfied. He continued, now that there are 24 new docks, the distribution of benefits is undoubtedly the most important. There are 4 Earl families in Lion City, and they will undoubtedly take up the majority of the benefits. However, even if they take the meat, they will have to leave some soup for others. Otherwise, the tragedy in Southport will repeat itself. I estimate that there will be at least 10 docks for other powers to fight over. There are at least 10 families with some power in Lion City. It's obvious that there are more people than meat. At this time, everyone will naturally rely on their own abilities. Although the Delco family has some power, they don't have any outstanding advantages. If they want to snatch more than half of the docks, it will depend on luck. However, if Winston marries Josiah, then the situation will be different. Not only will they have the support of a new aristocrat, but Josiah also has the identity of a magician. This is a double weight. With this, the Delco family will definitely win in the battle for the docks. With the gold coin production line at the docks, in addition to the protection of a magician with a long lifespan, why would the Delco family worry about not prospering? TSK. Makes sense? Makes sense. After hearing your words, I didn't come to this gathering in vain. The surrounding people all agreed, looking at the gloomy young man with admiration. The young man pouted slightly, wearing a far-sighted expression. He waved his hand to indicate that this was nothing. These ignorant and incompetent idiots only know how to drink and play with women all day long. They don't even know about this news. They've increased my reputation for nothing. Thinking of how the surrounding young man would spread his name and words to various gatherings, the gloomy young man couldn't help but feel even more proud. I was wondering why this Winston didn't go to the brothel with us recently. So this is the reason. The freckled young man looked at Winston, who was trying his best to perform, with jealousy. It's still too early to say this. Look, Josiah obviously doesn't have a good impression of him. Oh, so you want to go up and give it a try? Haha, it's a fair competition. TSK, I didn't expect Josiah to be so popular, Tang lamented after hearing the comments of the group of aristocrats. After he had a preliminary understanding of how precious and rare magicians were, he had already thought highly of their status and importance. But now, it seemed that it was far from enough. After the song ended, warm applause sounded once again. At this moment, a person who looked like a butler came to Winston's side and whispered something in his ear. Winston's expression gradually became excited. After the applause ended, he couldn't wait to say, "Let me tell everyone a piece of good news. Sir Bevan is outside the manor. Everyone, come with me to welcome him." Boom! The moment he finished speaking, everyone was in an uproar, and the atmosphere in the hall instantly became lively. A big shot? Tang, and secretly guessed when he saw the people around him exclaiming nonstop. Then, he found out about Robert Bevan's identity from the heated discussions. The Robert family was one of the 4 great Earl families in Rhine City. Earl Robert was the current mayor of Rhine City, and this Bevan was the second son of the Earl. Usually, the second son didn't have the right to inherit. But this Robert family was a little special. From the casual discussions of the people around him, Tang Yin found out that the eldest son of the Robert family didn't seem to be liked by the Earl. However, the second son, Bevan, was highly valued by the Earl. Now, he had already started to help the Earl with city affairs. He looked exactly like the next city lord. Such a special person was obviously worthy of befriending by the young aristocrats. If they could really gain the friendship of this future mayor, their family's future development in Rhine City naturally wouldn't have to worry. Probably because everyone thought of this, the gathering hall instantly emptied out. Everyone followed Winston outside the manor to welcome this Robert Bevan. Mr. Robert Bevan. Chidian Chinese website welcomes readers to come and read. The latest, fastest, and most popular series are all original works at Chidian. Chapter 26. Outside the manor. A golden-haired strong man was standing with his hands behind his back. He had a chiseled face, a hooked nose, and a gaze as sharp as a griffin's. This was a man with a strong sense of presence. Even if this kind of person was in a crowd, one would involuntarily fix their gaze on him when they swept their eyes over him. This person was Robert Bevan. He was Robert Bevan. Second brother, why are you here? Betsy dashed out from the crowd and ran up to the golden-haired man. I just happened to pass by. I heard that Winston is having a gathering here, so I came to join in the fun. Bevan's chiseled face instantly thawed as he explained to Betsy gently. These words made Winston, who was standing at the side, straighten his back, feeling that he had gained a lot of face. Robert? Sir Bevan, welcome. Your presence brings light to our humble manor. Winston's tone was agitated and a little uneasy as he spoke. It was no wonder that Winston behaved this way. Although they were all second-generation nobles, their levels were clearly not on the same level. Winston admitted that he was an aristocratic youth who ate, drank, and played, but the other party was a political elite who had already made a name for himself. There's no need to be so polite. This is a gathering for young people, not a Congress hall for a bunch of old men. Everyone laughed in agreement, and the atmosphere became much more relaxed. The witty humor instantly closed the distance between them. From this, it could be seen that this Bevan was indeed good at socializing. When everyone crowded around Bevan and returned to the hall, Mr. Diamond, who had finished his performance, was naturally invited out again. However, his performance was clearly no longer the theme of this gathering. Everyone took turns to greet Bevan with wine glasses in hand. Although Bevan was in the crowd, he appeared increasingly calm and composed. He calmly responded to all sorts of greetings, occasionally saying something to the people around him. All of this was done very naturally, making everyone present feel that they were being valued. The atmosphere in the hall had clearly reached a climax because of Bevan's performance. Tang naturally didn't care about this. It was close to noon, and he was eating heartily at the dining table. He had to admit that the food here was indeed exquisite and delicious, satisfying Tang's craving. However, there were only a few. After a short while, there were already a dozen empty plates piled up in front of him. Betsy, who took the time to look over, was stunned. It was as if he was staring at an ogre. Betsy came back to her senses. She pulled Josiah beside her and pointed. Josiah also pursed his lips and chuckled when he saw the way Tang ate. In the end, Tang swallowed a mouthful of the wine-red sour liquid, picked up the silk handkerchief beside him, and wiped his mouth. He breathed a sigh of relief and satisfaction. Finally, he had eaten and drank his fill. Taking advantage of the crowd's attention on Bevan, Tang strolled out of the hall. They passed through a side hall and walked through a long corridor. Tang's eyes lit up, and everything suddenly became clear. In front of him was a large back garden. The design of the manor was very interesting. Tang believed that if it was nighttime, there would be many young men and women who had escaped from the gathering to have a good chat. Of course, this kind of terrain was undoubtedly what Tang liked. Tang looked back and saw Josiah in a light white dress walking over from the corridor. Hey, Josiah, why did you come out? No matter where the identity of a magician was, it was impossible to be ignored like a coachman. Logically, at this time, she should be talking to Bevan or something. It's too stuffy inside. Well, I'm sorry for dragging you into this. You must be bored. Tang felt warm in his heart. He knew that Josiah saw him coming out of the hall alone and was afraid that he would be bored, so she came to accompany him. It's okay. The food here is good. It's quite delicious. This trip was not in vain. Probably thinking of Tang's table manners, Josiah pursed her lips and chuckled. Then she sighed and said, Actually, I don't like it here either. In comparison, I prefer the atmosphere of the library. But my Diddy forced me to come. Well, let's not talk about this. Without waiting for Tang In to comfort her, Josiah pulled a flower branch and said, let's talk about something else. Well, I don't know why, but when I talk to you, I feel much more relaxed. Is that so? That's really a deep honor. Tang In responded in amazement. Oh, do I have the talent of girl's friend? Yes. I didn't expect you to be a coachman. Alas, I thought you lied to me last time. Why would I lie to you? Why? Is this profession not good? I didn't mean that. I just think that it's a pity that you're a coachman with such deep thoughts. You don't understand, right? This is called a master among the people. Master? Ha, how high? Well, as high as several stories. Cheeky. Ha ha. The fragrance of flowers assailed his nostrils, and the beauty was by his side. In such a beautiful scene, Tang In's witty words made Josiah chuckle. Yeah, extreme joy begets sorrow. Josiah, who was leaning over and laughing loudly, was hooked by a flower branch. As he moved forward, he heard a rip sound and fell on his back. Without having time to think carefully, Tang In half-hugged Josiah, warm as jade, with a pleasant fragrance. These two words instantly appeared in Tang In's mind. The two of them were stunned for a while. CIA! A shout suddenly rang out from behind them. The two of them instantly came back to their senses, and Josiah struggled to get up. Rip! The two of them paused again. Tang In saw that the light white dress, which had been slightly torn, had become even more torn as Josiah struggled, revealing a beautiful back that was as fair as jade. See, you guys. Winston, who had rushed over, stared at the two of them hugging each other, dumbfounded. In an instant, Winston's eyes turned crimson. He bellowed furiously. Tang In, I'm going to kill you. Damn. Tang In frowned, feeling upset. What day is it today? In just a short while, the two of them are shouting that they want to kill me. Winston clearly wasn't just joking. With a clank sound, the sword at his waist was drawn out. He took the opportunity to stab toward Tang In's forehead, clearly wanting to kill him. Tang In spread out his hands and pushed out a gentle force, sending Josiah to the side. He then rolled on the ground in a sorry state, flipping into the bushes at the side. Stop it! Josiah shouted anxiously. Josiah... Winston opened his mouth and pointed at Josiah's side in a daze. Josiah, who had stood up straight, suddenly felt a chill on his back. Knowing that he had exposed himself, he blushed and quickly picked up a piece of cloth to cover it up. Winston's expression was savage, and his handsome face appeared even more abstract. If Winston's rage was said to be at 100 points earlier, then right now, it was undoubtedly over the limit. Burning with fury, Winston raised his sword, wanting to slash toward Tang In, who had stood up from behind the bushes. Just then, swoosh. Tang In, who was behind the bushes, instantly narrowed his eyes. Just earlier, a blue light flashed in Josiah's hand, and an object in the shape of a water arrow appeared out of thin air, striking in front of Winston like a bullet. A black hole the size of a finger instantly appeared on the ground, its depth unknown. Was this magic? You attacked me? You actually used magic to attack me? Right now, Winston appeared to be in a daze. I'm sorry, Winston. Things aren't what you think they are. I only want to calm down. Calm down? You're telling me to calm down in such a situation? Winston bellowed and pointed behind her. Twain spread out his hands and showed an innocent smile at the right time. Of course, this smile was undoubtedly piercing to Winston's eyes. Calm down. All right, I'll calm down right now. Winston pulled off the white glove with his trembling right hand and tossed it toward Tang In. I want to have a duel with you. I refuse. Tang In's tone sounded very self-righteous. Refuse? What kind of joke is this? You lowly, despicable coward. Tossing a white glove to the other party was a way to announce a duel when there was an irreconcilable conflict between aristocrats. Usually, no one would refuse. This was something that concerned themselves and their family's honor. Tang In frowned. Shut up. I'm not an aristocrat. Why can't I refuse? Winston was stunned. That was right. A duel was something that only aristocrats could do. Commoners were naturally not restricted. This Winston must have fainted from anger to have made such a blunder. All right, Winston. I'm tired. That's all for today. I'll head home first. In order to prevent Winston from doing anything else, Josiah quickly dragged Tang and out of the back garden. Winston went into a daze as he watched the two of them leave. With Josiah's appearance, it was naturally not suitable for him to appear in the hall again. Thankfully, Josiah was still quite familiar with this place. The two of them took another route, passed through the side door, and boarded Tangen's carriage. Sorry. The two of them were stunned for a moment, then couldn't help but smile as they looked at each other. Tangen took off his jacket and draped it over Josiah's body, blocking her back. Josiah, on the other hand, kept on helping Tang and remove the leaves, wooden needles, and other things from his body. Earlier, when Tang had rolled into the shrubs in a sorry state, he had only cared about protecting his face and had gotten quite a lot of things on his body. In the manner, Winston returned to the gathering hall with a black face. At the entrance of the hall, Winston picked up a bottle of wine from the servant's tray next to him in a rough manner and downed it. Winston, what's the matter? You didn't find Josiah? Bevan walked over with a glass of wine. No. Winston caught his breath and recounted the scene from earlier with great hatred. TSK, I thought it was something else. Just this? Bevan smiled and drank a mouthful of wine. Without waiting for Winston to speak, he continued, the romance between a noble lady and a coachman is all a drama. How many such cases have happened in the modern world? Moreover, even if Josiah was bewitched, will the Crowley family agree to it? And then what should I do? Winston regained some energy. Given the relationship between your families, Josiah will eventually be yours. As for that laughable coachman, I heard that your family has ambitions for the port and has already started to nurture a gang? We are working on this. You mean? Winston licked his lips, and a fierce expression flashed past his face. Let's not talk about this. Cheers. Cheers. Their wine glasses clinked, and the two of them drank with tacit understanding. After chatting casually for a while, Winston excused himself with the excuse that he had something on. Bevan looked at Winston's hurried back view, and his lips twitched. He shook his head and turned to enter the gathering hall. P.S. And this chapter has 3,000 words, right? It's not too much to ask for a collection and recommendation, right? Not too much. Carrot. Chapter 27. If you stayed beside a hot stove for a minute, you would feel like you had been sitting there for 2 hours. However, if you stayed beside a beautiful lady for 2 hours, you would feel like you had only been sitting there for a minute. Josiah was undoubtedly a beautiful lady, and she was a beautiful lady with her own unique temperament. Tangen was, of course, very relaxed and happy to travel with such a companion. A few simple jokes from later generations made Josiah extremely happy. A beautiful lady's every frown and smile would move one's heart. If one could make a beautiful lady smile, it would undoubtedly be a very satisfying thing. Even a child could feel this. The only difference was that when a child failed to make a girl laugh, he would often choose to make the girl he had a good impression of cry. Happy times were always short. An hour's journey quickly flew by with laughter and laughter. After sending Josiah home, Tang drove towards the Thieves' Union. That was the place he wanted to go after completing his task in the morning. However, he met Josiah and Betsy halfway and was delayed for about half a day. When he passed by a secluded place, the sound of galloping horse hooves came from behind. Tang looked back in surprise. The traffic in Lion City during the day was very bad. Although this place was secluded, there was a main road in front. If he rushed out at this speed, he would most likely end up in a tragedy. Behind him was a shrouded carriage, and the driver was an open and burly man. He kept waving his long whip to hit the horse, driving the carriage so fast that it was about to hit Tangen's carriage. Damn it, there was no lack of such reckless drivers in any world. Tang hurriedly controlled the reins to move inwards. The carriage behind him was getting closer and closer. Tang suddenly frowned. Was it an illusion? Why did the driver's eyes seem to be fixated on him just now? Before Tang could think about it, the shrouded carriage had already rushed to his side. Hiss, bang, F***CK. Tang cursed angrily. He steadied himself and tried hard to control the reins. Tang's carriage was continuously pushed to the side of the road by another horse-drawn carriage. Some of the low eaves facing the street immediately had tiles flying everywhere. This won't do. Tang indecisively cut the reins with his dagger. He stepped on the beam of the carriage and flipped over, rolling into the alley beside the road. Boom! Tang's carriage crashed into a wall not far away and was sent flying. The carriage fell apart in an instant, and the frightened horses galloped away. When Tang stood up from the alley with an ashen face, the carriage turned around and blocked one end of the alley. The door of the car opened, and 7 or 8 men holding snow-white long sabers walked out in a single file. Tang turned around and looked back. There were also 4 or 5 big men walking out of the alley with hideous grins on their faces. At this point, even a fool would know that this was obviously a trap. Tang almost didn't need to think to know who set this trap. I was careless. I didn't expect to be killed so soon. The driver squinted at Tang and waved his hand. Common face, long and narrow eyes. Kill him. More than a dozen bloodthirsty eyes were instantly bloodshot. They raised their sabers, reflecting a pale white light. Kill. Tang didn't retreat. Instead, he rushed forward and rushed toward the most powerful big man. There was nothing to say at this time. When enemies meet on a narrow path, the brave will win. The big man was stunned. Tang instantly crashed into his arms. Before he could react, he felt a pain in his chest. He looked down and saw that there was a huge hole in his chest. He jumped out of the big man's arms and faced a net of sabers formed by 4 white lights. Ding! Clang! The long sabers fell to the ground. There was a muffled groan and blood splashed. Suddenly, a blood-red dagger broke through the net of sabers and quickly swept across the wrists of the 2 big men. At this time, Tang, who had broken through the net of sabers, suddenly retreated quickly. He didn't look back. He raised the blood-red dagger again and lightly slid across the throat of the sneak attacker behind him. Fighting Chi? Damn it, quickly surround him. The big man saw the dagger, suddenly emitting a red light. His face changed greatly as he shouted. In an instant, more than a dozen white sabers lit up at the same time. Ouch! Damn it! Who are you cutting? He's too slippery. He rushed out. Quickly block him. Be careful, he's coming back. I hit him. Ah! In the narrow space, the white saber and the red dagger were constantly intertwined. Blood was constantly splashed like cheap water. The big man opened his mouth and stared at the fight in the field in a daze. The gray figure was completely submerged, but the blood-red dagger lit up from time to time. It was constantly harvesting the blood of the besiegers. Damn it! Is this a F***king driver? Is there a driver who can use fighting chi? The big man now hated the guy who gave him false information. You seem to be the leader. Eh? The big man stared blankly as if he had seen a ghost. Tang, who was covered in blood, suddenly appeared in front of him. Lie down. Before he could resist, he was knocked unconscious by a clean hand chop. The big men in the circle only now realized that Tang had come behind them and knocked out their boss. There were only 6 big men who could still stand. They looked at each other. In just a short while, half of them had been knocked out. Demon. The remaining big men saw that their boss was knocked down and immediately lost the courage to fight. They turned around and began to run away. Tang pursed his lips. His haste skill was still in effect. His figure instantly appeared behind the last big man, and he unceremoniously slit his throat with a dagger. The big man was still running when he suddenly felt a chill in his throat. Then he saw the demon's figure flash past him and attack his companions in front of him. Just as he was about to open his mouth to warn him, he saw a thin curtain of blood spurting out from under his chin. His vision turned black and he lost consciousness. In fact, if these 6 big men resisted desperately, they might have been able to hurt Tang, but they chose to run away. The terrain here was narrow and there was only one direction. If they exposed their backs to an assassin, there was no chance of survival. In a short while, the 6 people who ran away were all killed. Then, Tang Yin quickly returned to the place where they were attacked and confirmed whether these big men were dead or not. When he met someone who was still gasping for breath, Tang Yin immediately stabbed him with a knife without any expression. In less than 5 minutes, the alleyway returned to its peaceful state. After a while, Tang Yin carried the big man and drove the carriage into the depths of the alley. The only thing left in the empty alley were the blood stains on the walls and the smell of blood. In the depths of the alley. You should know what I want to ask. Say it. If I say it, will you let me go? No, but I will give you a quick death. I'm a killer. Well, according to your words, an assassin. Believe me, no one wants to experience the interrogation methods of an assassin. After a long time, a flame suddenly rose from the depths of the alley. Chapter 28. In the Dirk Manor, the gathering was coming to an end. About half of the aristocratic carriages parked outside had left. The remaining coachmen were gathered together and chatting idly. Their content was nothing more than some interesting news about the aristocrats, such as a noble lord having a mistress outside, or a certain madam secretly dating a lover. It had to be said that no matter where one was, a coachman would always act as a leak of secrets and spread of rumors. However, with the commotion at the manor's entrance, these coachmen, who were chatting animatedly, instantly dispersed. At the entrance, Winston accompanied the last batch of aristocratic youths out. As both parties exchanged pleasantries, they walked toward the parking lot. Aha! Thank you for your hospitality, Brother Winston. Today's trip wasn't in vain. I'm going to organize a gathering another day. I hope Brother Winston can do me the honor of attending. I have a drama salon at my place. I hope Brother Winston can take the time to come as well. What a coincidence! I have one too. Looking at the fervent faces around him, Winston couldn't help but feel a little smug. Of course, he knew why these aristocratic youths were trying to rope him in so enthusiastically. The influential figure in Lion City, Bevan, had come to his manor. Moreover, during the gathering, he didn't hide his close relationship with the Dirk family at all. This made him the center of attention. Winston enjoyed this feeling. At this moment, he felt that there was nothing he couldn't do. Josiah? Isn't he just a magician? To think that he dares to throw his face at me. After I get you, see how I'll train you. And that damn coachman. Oh, he should be floating on the Lino River now, right? Ha! To dare to snatch my woman, he's courting death. As they exchanged warm greetings, the aristocratic carriages left the manor one after another. Ha! Please don't leave. Brother Winston, you're too polite. Ha! It's what I should do. Amidst the polite greetings, Winston once again sent off a young aristocrat. In front of the door, that young aristocrat grabbed Winston's arm. Brother Winston, you must come to my drama salon. Of course. Winston felt that his handsome face was about to cramp up from laughing. The coachman, standing at the side, quickly went up to open the door. Just then, bang! The door of the luxurious carriage suddenly exploded, and a colorful figure dashed out like a bolt of thunder, followed by an extremely dazzling blade. Assassin. Be careful. Nobles naturally had bodyguards by their side. The young noble bodyguard was the closest to the assassin, and he immediately warned the assassin. He stepped to the side and drew his sword, blocking in front of the aristocrat. In the blink of an eye, the assassin passed by him. It was clear that the assassin's target was not the person he was supposed to protect. Winston was naturally behind the noble young man. Winston's guard wasn't in a good position, and right now, he was standing 3 steps behind Winston. It wasn't that the guard was negligent. In fact, under normal circumstances, the guard would stay 3 steps away from the person he was protecting. After all, unless they were in a dangerous place, no one would be willing to be next to a burly man who followed them everywhere. Furthermore, a distance of 3 steps could be covered in an instant. But now, the guard was a little desperate. Although he also hurriedly handed over his sword, he was very clear that he could not make it in time. So he anxiously shouted, "Be careful." He hoped that Winston would have some reaction to buy some time for him. Was Winston a warrior? There was no doubt that it was. In fact, all aristocrats, regardless of their nobility, would send their young descendants to aristocratic academies to learn etiquette, combat, and so on. Therefore, basically, all young aristocrats knew a thing or two. The only difference was the level of their martial prowess. Winston wasn't someone who could endure hardships. Therefore, when he came out from the academy, he had only just broken through to become a beginner warrior. His battle aura level was only enough to cover his weapon with it. Moreover, it had been a few years since he had faced an official battle. Therefore, when faced with the assassin, his first reaction was to draw out the slender aristocratic sword at his waist. It was definitely right to draw out a sword during a battle. However, in the current situation, the assassin's dagger was about to reach him. Instead of dodging, he chose to draw out his sword. This was undoubtedly an idiotic action. As expected, when Winston's hand touched the sword hilt, the dagger had already reached his chest. He stared in a daze at the mask with messy symbols drawn on it that had suddenly appeared before him. Then he felt a sharp pain in his chest. Lowering his head, he saw a brightly colored dagger piercing right in his left chest. Ah! Winston let out an agonizing cry. How dare you? The guard panicked and pointed his blue longsword at the assassin's forehead. Ding! In the assassin's empty hand, a glowing red dagger suddenly appeared as if by magic. Brandishing it, it clashed with the longsword. The guard's swift sword caused the blocking assassin to pause. Everyone finally got a clear look at the assassin's appearance. Long hair, flowery clothes, a mask with messy symbols, and a brightly colored dagger. Ghost face. Ghost face. The two guards were knowledgeable people. Seeing the assassin's strange appearance, they instantly cried out in alarm. Kiki! An owl-like laughter rang out. The assassin's figure flashed and covered the distance of several feet in an instant. When the guard raised his head, he saw the dagger already in front of him. Roar! The guard, who had experienced hundreds of battles, immediately raised his sword to block. Due to Ghostface's reputation, a blue armor-like illusion appeared on his body. This was a battle aura armor that could be used after becoming an intermediate warrior. Oh no! The guard cried out in his heart. The storm-like attack that he had imagined didn't come. The brightly colored figure actually made a feint and swept past him. Kiki! Laughter rang out beside his ear, sounding very ear-piercing. Damn it! Don't run! Feeling that he was being teased, the guard was burning with anger and wanted to give chase. But after a few steps, he stopped dejectedly. Putting aside the fact that his speed wasn't as fast as Ghostface to begin with, he even had a battle aura armor on his body now. Battle aura armor burned one's own battle aura to form an armor on the outside, increasing one's defense. This thing was called battle aura armor. It was almost the same as a real armor. While the defense was increased, the gravity also increased by quite a lot. Hence, one's speed would naturally slow down. In the end, the guard could only watch as Ghostface went around the unaware horse carriage in front and disappeared into the forest by the roadside. Was this the #1 assassin in Lion City? In broad daylight, he came and went in the span of 10 breaths at most, leaving behind a brightly colored dagger that was now stabbed into Winston's left chest. What's going on? Am I going to die? The dagger hadn't been pulled out in the span of 10 breaths, so Winston naturally wasn't completely dead. Of course, he wasn't far from death. Right now, he was in a critical state. At this moment, he didn't completely understand his own situation. But as his vision gradually blurred, Winston finally regained his senses. He panicked. How can this be? I haven't inherited the title of Viscount. I haven't married Josiah. My life has just begun. How can I die? As his mumbling grew softer and softer, Winston, whose face was filled with unwillingness, stared at the sky with his eyes wide open. Chapter 29. In a country where royal power reigned supreme, the nobles would always have some unimaginable privileges. For example, in the middle of the main road in Lion City, there was a jade road surrounded by small stone blocks. There were very few carriages on it, making it seem very spacious. However, no matter how crowded the surrounding roads were, there were no carriages on this spacious road. This was the Nobles' Road. The Nobles' Road, as the name suggested, was a road that only the nobles' carriages could take. This road was built by the nobles to show their special status and to prevent their luxurious carriages from being scratched. If a commoner's carriage walked on it and was caught, they would face the treatment of being fined, having their carriage impounded, and being detained. At this moment, a carriage with a golden lion's head symbol was driving on the nobles' road at a moderate pace. Most people in Lion City recognized this symbol because it was the emblem of their city lord, Count Robert's family. Bevan, who had left Winston's party early, was sitting inside. He was holding a cup of thick tea that was steaming hot. After the hot tea, his chiseled face was slightly flushed. Although he didn't stay in the party for long, he was toasted quite a lot. Although he was a little dizzy, Bevan was still in a good mood. He was very satisfied with the rewards of today's party. Of course, he couldn't have just passed by the manor. The nobles present wouldn't think this way either. They would only think that the Robert family and the Dirk family were close enough. This was the effect that Bevan wanted. He thought highly of the Dirk family's power and potential, especially with the addition of a magician. In Bevan's eyes, Winston was merely a good-for-nothing. But now, this good-for-nothing had good luck. There was a high possibility that he would marry a magician. In that case, this good-for-nothing would be of use. So today, he used Winston as a breakthrough point to express his goodwill to the Dirk family. The Dirk family naturally wouldn't reject the olive branch thrown by the city lord's second son. This was a win-win situation. I'm one step closer to success. Bevan sipped his tea and thought contentedly. There were no secrets between the nobles. Those young nobles who were enjoying themselves all knew about the expansion of the pier. How could Bevan not know? In fact, he was one of the earliest people in Lion City to know about this. He clearly remembered that afternoon when his father, old Count Robert, called him to his study and handed him the documents regarding the expansion of the docks. He patted him on the shoulder and said, "You've done well these past few years and have achieved a lot. You're much better than that useless brother of yours. But if you want to be the city lord, this bit of capital is not enough. I'm about to step down from my position, so I only have the right to suggest the next mayor." The deciding factor is still the votes of all the nobles in Lion City. You don't have enough capital, but expanding the wharf is an opportunity. I have already spoken to the elders in the family. If you can achieve success in this field, you'll be able to bring benefits and glory to the Robert family. The clan will fully support you to ascend to the position of the city lord. Baywin was in his 30s this year and had a strong desire to seize power. Of course, he didn't want to miss this opportunity. Therefore, he had been secretly preparing ever since he heard the news. Of course, the ownership of the docks belonged to the Brand Kingdom. Every year, Lion City had to pay taxes to the Brand Kingdom according to the number of docks. However, just like what Joshua had said, there were more than 50 tax items in the kingdom, while there were close to 100 tax items in Lion City. The difference between the tax items was shocking, and when it was placed on the dock, the benefits would be even greater. The nobles in Lion City had a tacit agreement regarding the ownership of the docks. As long as you displayed enough power and were stronger than all your competitors, you would be able to own the docks after the approval of the Lion City government. The Robert family was one of the 4 count families in Lion City. They didn't need to fight to get the benefits they deserved. But this wasn't Bevan's goal. He needed to greatly defeat the other 3 count families and prove his ability to the clan. But the 4 families had been fighting for so many years that they knew each other well. It was easier said than done to greatly defeat each other. But Bevan's mind was flexible. Since he couldn't find any support internally, he would set his sights on the outside. Bevan understood that if he wanted to gain the support of the other nobles, reputation and relationships were useless. He needed to use practical benefits to tie them to his ship. Where would the benefits come from? It could only come from the newly built 24 docks. Bevan's idea was to seize the majority of the docks together with the other nobles. This way, not only would he be able to share it with his followers, he would also get more. Moreover, with these benefits, these nobles would become his family support. This kind of result would definitely satisfy his family. He had been busy for the past few days. He had already negotiated with a few powerful nobles like the Delk family. Although this had something to do with his family's influence, Most of the credit still came from his methods of maneuvering. How good would it be if I was the eldest son of the family? Bevan rubbed his temples and frowned as he thought. This was also a question he often thought about after he became sensible. Yes, the damned inheritance system of the eldest son. It was because of this system that the elders in the clan had always been distant from him. As for that elder brother, who drew all sorts of strange portraits all day, although he had been good to him since young, Bevan still felt disdain towards this elder brother of his. In his opinion, this elder brother of his was a typical example of someone who didn't do his job properly and lost his will to play around. Bevan took a deep breath and looked at the golden lion emblem on the carriage with infatuation. I will prove to you that I am the most suitable successor of the Robert family. Asterisk knock knock. Asterisk just as Bevan's mind was wandering, the carriage door was lightly knocked. Come in, young Master Bevan. A person who looked like a butler walked in. And it's Gray. Have a seat. Bevan nodded. He was naturally not unfamiliar with this butler. This was an elder who had followed him since he was young and had helped him take care of most things. I just received news that the leader of the Green Wolf Gang was assassinated. Green Wolf Gang? Oh, it's a gang supported by the Black family. Ha, good job. Do you know who killed him? The Black family was one of the 4 Earl families in Lion City. This family controlled almost half of Lion City's trade. Earl Black was also the chief financial officer of Lion City. Gray, it's Ghostface. Bevan raised his eyebrows. It's this Ghostface again. Didn't the president of the Iron Blade Society, supported by the Austin family, also get killed by him? The Austin family was also one of the Earl families in Lion City. This family used to be pirates. Later on, when the first king of the Brand Kingdom established the country, they contributed a lot and were finally conferred the title of Earl. Now that they relied on the Lion River, they simply engaged in smuggling, black market, and human trafficking. Earl Austin was the Vice City Lord of Lion City. Yes. Haha. If it wasn't for the fact that I couldn't find his ghost face, I would really want to have a drink with him to show my gratitude. Bevan raised his teacup and laughed. Who said it wasn't? Just as the two of them were excitedly talking about Ghostface, suddenly there was a rush of horse hooves. Shouts and screams could be heard. Bevan frowned. Butler Gray slightly opened the curtains and said, It's the cavalry from the guard hall. Bevan, cavalry? Why are they in such a hurry? What happened? Please wait a moment, young master. After saying that, Gray got off the carriage and sent someone to summon a cavalry for questioning. After a while, Gray walked into the carriage with a strange expression. Ghostface killed someone again. Oh, which unlucky person is it this time? Don't tell me it's the Matthews family, huh? The Matthews family was one of the 4 Earl families in Lion City. This family operated a blacksmith shop and a weapon shop. Warriors' long swords, magicians' wands, and other battle equipment were all managed by them. Earl Matthews himself was the security officer of Lion City and was in charge of the city's security. It's Winston. Winston, which Winston? Bevan was a little dazed. For a moment, he felt that there might be something wrong with his hearing. The Delp family's bang. The exquisite teacup in Bevan's hand instantly shattered into pieces. P.S. Since there's a recommendation in today's third watch. At the same time, I'm self-righteously asking for your collection and recommendation, carrot. Chapter 30. The news of Winston's assassination quickly spread throughout the aristocratic circle. Although the aristocrats weren't as furious as Bevan, they were still astonished. One must know that aristocratic descendants were rarely assassinated. Caesar Continent didn't implement family planning. For the sake of prosperity, aristocratic families were very passionate about reproduction. Hence, even if it was an enemy, they wouldn't use such a method that wasn't fatal but could easily lead to endless revenge. The aristocrats could imagine the Dirk family's crazy revenge. The identity of the assassin had been confirmed to be Ghostface. Regarding Ghostface, the #1 assassin in Lion City, the aristocrats weren't unfamiliar with him. In fact, even the commoners had heard of him. This was because Ghostface had been active in Lion City for over 10 years. His bounty had been hanging on the wanted wall of Lion City's guards for over 10 years. The aristocrats didn't think that the Dirk family would be able to capture Ghostface for revenge. Moreover, Ghostface was merely an assassin who was paid to do things. Hence, they had to be careful of the Dirk family's enemy. That's right, I am the dividing line at this moment in the forest outside the north gate of Lion City. A strange person was gathering materials to start a fire. He was strange because of his attire, flowery clothes, long hair, mask. If there was a knowledgeable person here, he would definitely exclaim, "Ghostface." The fire was quickly ignited, and the strange man quickly threw his long hair, his flowery clothes, and his mask into the fire. Under the mask was an ordinary face with slender eyes. It was Tang Yin. Slowly, the fire started to burn. The mask gradually changed shape, emitting some black smoke. Tang Yin couldn't help but back off, fanning himself with his hand. F*CK. The smell of paint is so F*King disgusting. I don't know how that ghost face can stand it. This time, this place, in addition to the things he was burning. That's right, the ghost face who assassinated Winston was Tang Yin. After ascertaining from the bare-chested, burly man that the instigator was Winston, he made some preparations and headed straight for the manor with a murderous aura. In fact, even if Winston didn't send people to kill him, he wouldn't let him off. Tang Yin's original plan was to observe for a few more days, make more preparations, and then kill him in one fell swoop. However, the situation had changed. If the news of these men's deaths were to reach Winston's ears, they'd definitely be on high alert and search for him everywhere. By then, it'd be impossible for him to kill Winston. Tang Yin wasn't sure if Winston had told anyone about his assassination attempt. If he did, then even if he killed Winston, his true identity would be exposed. The consequences of exposing an assassin's identity were unthinkable. Even if he ran away, he would still be a hidden danger in the future. After giving it much thought, Tang Yin eventually decided to use Ghostface's identity to assassinate Winston, hoping to confuse him. As for why it was Grimace, the reason was simple. It was because Tang Yin had seen such an assassin before. After asking the old butler to bring up Grimace's image in the system space, Tang Yin made the mask and costume accordingly. Due to the lack of time, it was naturally impossible for him to make the same thing. However, who would care about what he drew when it was so colorful? Tang Yin's plan succeeded. During the assassination attempt, his Grimace appearance was shouted out by the guards on the spot. In order to leave a deeper impression, he even specially left behind a colorful dagger. It could be said that Tang Yin had done everything he should do. All that was left was to wait for the results. The fire gradually died down, and the few items had been burned to ashes. Tang Yin stood up, subconsciously supporting his back with his hand. He shook his head and headed toward Lion City. When Tang Yin slowly walked to the north gate of Lion City, he happened to see a team of cavalrymen dressed in green armor rushing out of the city, heading in the direction of the Dirk Manor. After walking around the city for over 10 minutes, Tang Yin bought some things, then walked into the inn he was temporarily staying at. At this moment, there were some slight changes to his appearance, and his long and slender eyes were covered. Ever since he was spied on at the inn, Tang Yin had become a lot more careful. However, it wasn't a solution to keep pretending. Tang Yin was prepared to gather some money to buy a house in Lion City. After confirming that the small mechanism on the door hadn't been triggered, Tang Yin quickly entered the room. Tang Yin stumbled a little. He took in a deep breath and removed his shirt with a frown. A long, slanted wound about 6 inches long appeared on his back. The skin and flesh of the wound were flipped open, and fresh blood slowly seeped out. This wound wasn't caused by Winston's guards. It was caused by those burly men when Tang Yin was fighting in the alley. Due to the lack of time, the wound hadn't been treated. Thankfully, although these burly men from the underworld were vicious enough, their knife skills were still a lot inferior. This wound looked terrifying, but it was only a flesh wound. Otherwise, Tang Yin wouldn't have had the chance to make a long-distance raid to kill Winston. Tang Yin first used the clothes he took off to gently wipe the wound. He then lay on the bed, took out a red bottle, and poured the liquid inside onto the wound. This thing was called Healing Potion, a medicine used to treat external injuries in the alternate world. This thing wasn't cheap. One bottle cost 5 silver coins. F*CK. Tang and let out a stifled snort. Did I take the wrong one? Is this F*King chili water? After the potion came into contact with the wound, Tang In felt a scorching sensation on his back, as if it was burning. Thankfully, Tang In had gotten used to level 1 pain in the system space. If it was in the past, Tang In would probably be howling in agony. After enduring these 10 or so seconds, the wound on his back suddenly felt comfortable, and the coolness reached the bottom of his heart. When he turned his head, the bleeding from the wound had stopped, and he no longer felt the pain from before. As expected, you get what you pay for. Tang In praised silently, then wrapped a few rounds of bandages around his body. After everything was settled, Tang In let out a long sigh of relief and wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. After cleaning up the blood-stained clothes, Tang In entered the killer system. Ding! Congratulations to Killer Tang In for breaking through to level 1 blood energy. Tang In wasn't surprised by the system's synthetic voice. He had used 400 blood energy during the fight in the alley, but after killing the 10 burly men, he gained another 500 blood energy. If it wasn't for the 500 blood energy replenishment, Tang In wouldn't have had the confidence to complete the assassination. At that time, his total blood energy value had reached 950. Now that he had killed Winston, it was normal for it to exceed 1,000. After all, Winston was a beginner warrior. Tang In opened the killer panel. Blood energy value, 1450/10,000 blood energy level. Level 2 special effects. Elementary deterrence, double increase, elementary defense penetration. 500 points. Tang In was stunned. Based on his previous experience, Tang In knew that the amount of blood energy gained would change according to the opponent's strength. But killing Winston gave him too much blood energy. It was already the sum of the 10 burly men he had killed. Too much. The old butler appeared in front of Tang In like a ghost. How could that be? Of course, the more the better. The old butler said calmly, the way the system calculates blood energy is not just based on martial strength. Tang In was stunned for a moment, then understood. Yes, if it was based on martial strength, wouldn't the blood energy gained from assassinating an old king be less than that of a hooligan? Old butler, do you think my identity will be exposed this time? There isn't enough information to analyze. My suggestion is to temporarily change your appearance and not come into contact with people you know as Tang In. After a pause, the old butler continued. In the following period of time, you can learn new skills and continue to read books to supplement the system's information. Skills? Tang In's heart skipped a beat. He pulled open the skill tree on the assassin interface. There were indeed a few skills that were lit up. This meant that they had reached the standard and could be learned. After tasting the sweetness of the rapid increase and increase, Tang In was looking forward to the prowess of the skills he was about to learn. Tang In put away the assassin interface and said casually, "Old butler, you've read so many books. Did you gain anything?" "Yes." "Oh? What did you gain?" Tang In asked curiously. "The biggest gain is that I know this is a killer's paradise." Why do you say that?" "Because this is a place where strength gives birth to power, and power overrides the law." It's a little profound. Let's put it this way. A place where assassin organizations can be put out in the open and where killing transactions are so straightforward. Don't you think it's a killer's paradise? If you put it this way, it's really... Tang In thought of the bandits' union and couldn't help but nod. P.S. The 3rd chapter is about 9:30 tonight. Of course, it could be earlier. Raccoon's character is guaranteed. There's a recommendation. Continue to stretch out your paw for collection and recommendation _. Chapter 31. The next morning, as soon as Tang In opened his eyes and got up, his whole body crackled like beans being fried. F*CK. Tang In held his back and grimaced. Is this the bone shrinking skill? I almost lost half my life. As Tangen's blood and she had reached the requirements to learn some skills, he was excited to learn skills last night. After looking at it from top to bottom, he decided to learn the bone shrinking skill first. Tang In still remembered that the old butler had demonstrated the effect of the bone shrinking skill to him. Ka. The old butler, who was about 6 feet tall, turned into a child in an instant, just like Transformers. It was really magical. But when it was his turn to ka, his bones were F asterisk king broken. According to the old butler, Tangen's bones had already been fixed, and it was already past the best time to learn this skill. If he wanted to learn it now, it was inevitable that his bones would be broken and reorganized. Every time his bones were broken too badly, the old butler would cleanly stab him and reorganize his body. All right, let's do it again. Therefore, in about 4 hours, Tangen's bones were broken and reorganized in a cycle. The pain during this period was really not something that a normal person could endure. Fortunately, Tang had received special training in pain. Although he kept howling in pain, he did not have a mental breakdown in the end. After 4 hours, Tang In fainted in the system space and slept all the way until the sun rose. Tang In changed the bandage on his wound. The injury on his back had not fully recovered, but according to this trend, it would only take 2 to 3 days. When he went out, Tang In asked the hotel owner about the situation of buying a house in Lion City. He was told that he could do it at the City Affairs office. The City Affairs office was located in the middle of Lion City. After explaining the purpose of his visit, the lazy City Affairs office civil official raised his hand and pointed in the direction of the wall, indicating for Tang to take a look. There were many notes pasted on the wall. The size of the house, location, and price were all clearly written on them. After Tang finished reading, he could not help but click his tongue. The cheapest house on the list cost 100 gold coins, while the most expensive house in the Eastern District was priced at 200,000 gold coins. On the other hand, Tang only had about 10 gold coins in total, so he couldn't afford any of them. The house prices are not cheap. Tang rubbed his nose and sighed. Sir, do you want to buy a house? Tang turned his head in surprise and saw a young man with a clever aura looking at him with a smile. But it's too expensive, isn't it? Seeing Tang nod his head, the young man quickly said, the number of houses sold here can be counted with one hand. Believe me, the old men of the City Affairs office are never good at business. I grew up in Lion City and am familiar with everything here. If you trust me, I will help you find a suitable house. After that, you only need to pay me 3 silver coins. Tang said noncommittally. How do you expect me to believe your words? Sir, you can ask me. I know a little about the things in Lion City. Tang On's heart skipped a beat. I heard that a noble was assassinated yesterday. Yes, sir. The person who died was called Delk Vincent, the eldest son of Viscount Delk's family. The assassin was the #1 assassin in Lion City, Ghostface. Tang opened his mouth and looked at the young man in front of him in a daze. How do you know? The young man took out a stack of gray paper from his pocket and handed it over. Sir, if you're interested, there are some details on it. Tang took it and flipped it open. On the paper was written, Viscount Delk's eldest son was assassinated. Below it were some details, including the assassin, Ghostface, the Delk family situation, and some traces at the scene of the assassination. At the bottom of the page, there was a black and white picture. What is this? Lion tabloid, sir. Tabloid? Tang was in a daze. A sense of absurdity surged in his heart. He never looked at this kind of thing before, but now he had the urge to cry. Sir, how is it? Have you decided to use me? All right, I'll use you. Tang calmed down and pointed at the tabloid. But you have to tell me first, where can I buy this? Of course, no problem. The young man looked very excited and quickly said, every morning, it's sold at the docks in the East District. The price is 10 copper coins, so normally only the nobles in the East District and the merchants at the docks would buy it. After a pause, the young man raised his head and proudly said, the content on this is mainly about the business situation of various places and the things in the city. I would rather starve every day to buy it. I know that this information will bring me wealth one day. You will definitely become an outstanding merchant. Tang Yin looked at the smart young man and said emotionally, "Thank you. My name is Alan Arthur, Lion City's southwest residential area, in front of a two-story loft." "Mr. Arthur, it's here. This house is quite old, but it's well maintained. It's not big, but there's a courtyard at the back. If the owner wasn't in a hurry to sell it, 10 gold coins definitely wouldn't be enough to buy this place." While speaking, Alan went up and knocked on the door. After a while, a slightly stooped old lady opened the door. Seeing that it was Alan, she wasn't surprised and stepped aside to let them in. Alan greeted the old lady and brought Tang in inside. "This is the owner. Her son wants her to move in with them, so she sold this old house." Tang nodded and walked up and down the loft. Then he went to the back to look at the courtyard. To be honest, the house looked ordinary. Although it had 2 stories, it was small with only 1 top and 1 bottom. However, Tang was very satisfied with the terrain here. This place was located in the southwest corner of Lion City and was relatively remote. This was very suitable for him to live in. Rustle. Just as Tang was looking around in the courtyard, the sound of paper being flipped came from the courtyard of the house on the right. The sound of paper being flipped by the wind was originally very soft, but there seemed to be over 100 large pieces of paper being flipped by the wind in the courtyard. So there was a huge commotion. Alan explained, "There's a painter living next door. He's probably drying his paintings again." Tang Yin nodded in realization. "This painter isn't simple," Alan said with a mysterious expression. "Oh, what kind of famous painter is he?" "I don't know if he's famous or not, but the things he paints are too scary. What I'm saying is that his identity isn't simple. His name is Robert Bess, the eldest son of our Lion City's Count Robert." It's him." Tang was startled. At Vincent's gathering, when Bevan suddenly appeared, he heard the noble young man mention this person. It seemed that Count Robert didn't like this person. TSK, I really don't understand. Why not be the eldest son of the Count and become a painter?" Alan clearly disapproved of Bess's actions. "He lives here?" Tang asked curiously. This eldest son of the Count was too miserable. "Mr. Arthur isn't from our Lion City, right? Everyone in Lion City knows about this. This Bess is obsessed with painting and only paints strange things. The city lord wanted him to take care of the family matters, but he didn't care. One day, the city lord tore his paintings in anger and they fell out. Later on, Bess moved out of the Robert family and stayed here. He didn't go out every day and only focused on painting. I heard that the city lord was so angry that he wanted to sever all ties with him. He's really a weirdo." As expected, art was a disease. After this small episode, Tang finally decided to buy this house. The old lady was straightforward. After receiving the money, she gave the deed to the house to Tang. However, Tang had to wait until the next day to move in. After all, the old lady's things had to be packed up. After leaving the house, Tang gave 5 silver coins to the excited Alan and asked him for the address. Tang also saw that Alan was really familiar with Lion City. Who knew when he would have something to ask him? Although he still had a few silver coins in his pocket, Tang was still in a good mood. After all, he had a house. Civic Cat's character is unquestionable. I'm a civic cat who aspires to be on the newbie list. Cough cough. Collection. Recommendation. Cat's Thoughts. Chidian. Com welcomes readers to visit and read our latest, fastest, and hottest serialized works on Chidian Originals. Chapter 32. Hello, how can I help you? Collect the reward for the mission with serial number *************. All right, please wait a moment. The Thieves Union's mission process was very professional. One only needed to report the serial number when handing in the mission. This was something that Tang admired very much. Most of the thieves' missions were not to be seen in public, such as stealing, stalking, assassinating, and so on. If it was heard by outsiders in this crowded hall, it would undoubtedly be a hidden danger. Tang was here to collect the reward for killing Moad. It wasn't much, only 3 gold coins. But it was enough for him to buy some furniture and some small items. Have you heard? Ghostface is on the move again, and his target is a noble. TSK. He's really skilled and bold. Just as Tang and was waiting for the Union staff to confirm the mission, the conversation of a few thieves beside him entered his ears. I heard for missions in a week. No wonder he's the #1 assassin in Lion City. Once he does, it's shocking. Yeah, but the strange thing is that among these missions, 3 of them are for the leaders of lower middle-level guilds, and 1 is for the descendant of a noble. The difficulty isn't high, and it's obviously different from Ghostface's previous large-scale assassinations. Maybe Ghostface is bored recently and came out to kill for fun. You're really spouting nonsense. Who would kill nobles for fun? Just wait and see. Forget about those few leaders. After all, they can't be put on the table. But the death of that noble's eldest son will definitely cause the police station to make a big move. Big move? It's been more than 10 years, and they don't even know what Ghostface looks like. Yeah, an assassin could do what Ghostface did. It's really enviable. Envy is envy, but there are many assassins hanged on the gallows in the city square. Let's just be honest thieves. Not bad. That money isn't something that anyone can earn. Mr. Thief, here's your reward. Thank you. Tangan didn't accept any more quests. After receiving the bounty, he left the Thieves' Union. He hailed a carriage at the entrance and headed towards the hotel in the Northern District. From the group of people's conversation earlier, everyone seemed to have blamed Grimace for Winston's death. This was the outcome that Tang En wanted to see, and it made him feel a little more at ease. Tang En entered the system space in the car. Ding! Congratulations to Killer Tang En for completing the mission of killing a gang leader. Mission difficulty F. Rating E. Experience gained 150. Blood Chi 150. There weren't any surprises. The reward for this kind of mission was just like that. Tang En believed that if not for the fact that they were on a mission, killing Moya would at most give him 50 points of Blood Chi. When the horse carriage reached the center of Lion City, it couldn't help but slow down. Tang En opened the window and saw the pedestrians and carriages crowded together outside. Although the coachman had already tried his best to steer the horse carriage to the left and right, it was still drowned in the vast traffic. Tang En had already experienced the traffic in Lion City when the horse carriage was still here. Therefore, he wasn't in a hurry now. He knew that after this part of the journey, it would be better in front. Unlike the torrential traffic here, the carriages on the Aristocrats' lane in the middle of the main road were moving in an orderly manner. Most of the coachmen of the Aristocrats' carriages were standing straight and looking over with a slight smile on their faces. Tang En was very familiar with such gazes. Back then, when he was pedaling the 50-yuan bicycle he had bought and working hard to climb up the slope, the owners of the carriages passing by had given him the same gazes. Tang En smacked his lips, hating that he hadn't learned how to use hidden weapons yet. Otherwise, he would have scattered a handful of flying needles and taught the people and horses on the Aristocrats' lane a lesson. Just as Tang En was daydreaming, a soft sound entered his ears. Whoosh! Tang En was stunned and instinctively wanted to roll to the side. He couldn't be more familiar with such a sound. It was clearly the sound of a crossbow arrow being fired. Bang! Assassin! There was a deafening roar, and the window of a luxurious horse carriage on the Aristocrats' lane was immediately shattered. A thick saber stuck out from inside and deflected a crossbow arrow that was shot at him. Then, a man in black metal armor flipped out from the carriage and stood directly on top of the carriage. He waved his long saber and looked around like an eagle. The surroundings were quiet. Then, there were screams everywhere. The crowd surged, and the panicked crowd squeezed to the outside. Under such a tide, the horse carriage was instantly swept away like a leaf on a river. Damn! Tang En cursed angrily and flipped himself out of the toppled carriage. Were all the assassins in Lion City so arrogant? They even dared to attack in broad daylight. Whoosh whoosh. Among the crowd nearby, 2 crossbow arrows flew out from nowhere and were aimed at the man with the saber standing on top of the horse carriage. Good timing. The man laughed and jumped down from the horse carriage. Green fighting energy exploded on his saber and directly crushed the 2 crossbow arrows. Seeing the ferocious man rushing over, the crowd was even more panicked. They desperately rushed to the side of the road, afraid of being accidentally injured. Not good. In the crowd, Tang In saw a middle-aged woman carrying a baby get bumped from behind. The baby in her hand immediately slipped out and was about to fall to the ground and be trampled by the crowd. Tang In stomped on the ground and jumped out. He grabbed the baby's coat that was about to fall to the ground. Then, he exerted strength in his waist and abdomen and was about to forcefully flip over. Damn! Tang and instantly felt his back being stepped on a few times. Luckily, he managed to flip over and didn't have to worry about being trampled by the crowd. Bang! There was another loud noise. Tang looked back and saw the door of the horse carriage being smashed into pieces. A black figure was thrown backwards. Blood and lumps of things spurted out from his mouth in the air. Tang knew that this guy was definitely hopeless. Those lumps of things were obviously pieces of his internal organs. At this moment, 2 people walked out of the luxurious horse carriage. One of them was a young man in exquisite clothes and had an aristocratic aura. The other was a burly man wearing armor and carrying a broadsword on his back. Tang suddenly understood that the assassin who fired the crossbow in the crowd was just a feint. His purpose was to lure the guards over so that his companion could find an opportunity to attack. Who would have thought that the noble guard would beat him at his own game? After luring the other assassin to attack, he directly killed him. The noble young man glanced indifferently at the assassin's corpse and then turned his attention to the man who had rushed into the crowd. Obviously, he didn't care about the chaotic situation. Suddenly, 2 figures flew out from the crowd. They were dancing and screaming and directly collided with the oncoming blade-wielding man. Tang was stunned and his face changed dramatically. The blade-wielding man didn't hesitate. Green Glow's broadsword slashed horizontally. Immediately, blood sprayed into the air and the screams stopped abruptly. Damn! Tang clenched his fists. His eyes were about to pop out. The 2 figures flying in the air just now weren't assassins. They were clearly innocent civilians who had been thrown by the assassin. But now they were beheaded. After killing the 2 people, the burly man landed on the ground. He disappeared from Tang on sight. But then there was an unwilling roar. Obviously, the assassin hadn't been caught. This was also reasonable. It wasn't easy to find an assassin in this environment. Later, in order to lure the blade-wielding man over, the assassin took the initiative to expose himself. But when the blade-wielding man rushed over, he was delayed by the crazy actions of the assassin. Now, it was undoubtedly impossible to catch the assassin. At this time, the middle-aged woman finally squeezed over while crying. Tang immediately stuffed the baby into her arms. Ignoring her gratitude, he quickly ran, jumped up, and stepped on an overturned horse carriage. Tang's face was ashen. His eyes were like torches, constantly sweeping through the scattered crowd. Anger overflowed in his chest. He swore to kill this cold-blooded assassin. Chapter 33. The innocent passers-by who had lost their lives made the crowd even more flustered. The crowd desperately rushed to the side like waves. In this situation, finding an unknown assassin was undoubtedly as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Tang looked around in the carriage. All he could see were terrified faces. He could not find anything. However, just because Tang could not find him did not mean that others could not find him. Tang, who had already thought of a countermeasure, instantly entered the assassin system. Here, without waiting for Tang to ask, the old butler pointed to a person on the hologram a few meters in front of Tang. Tang did not say anything. He instantly switched to the outside world, and his eyes casually swept over the person. A small pointed hat, a black long coat, a face full of wrinkles and gullies. At first glance, this was clearly the old farmer from the countryside who had come to the city to look for relatives. However, Tang believed in the old butler's judgment and jumped off the carriage. Tang and also walked forward with the crowd. However, under his conscious control, his footsteps slowed down slightly. He quietly waited for the person to walk past him. It was only a distance of a few meters. The person quickly closed the distance. Tang and constantly sized up the assassin from the corner of his eyes. With a preconceived notion, Tang In finally found something unusual. Although the old farmer also had a panicked look on his face and even stumbled as he walked, he was still able to walk. However, perhaps it was the nature of an assassin. Every time there was a gap in the crowd, he would be the first to step forward. This kind of eyesight and reaction was not something an ordinary person could possess. Of course, this was after the fact. From an ignorant point of view, the old farmer was nothing more than a little faster than an ordinary person. Tang and suddenly slipped and cried out in alarm. His arms were raised high, as if he was being pushed by the crowd. He leaned against the side of the carriage, revealing an empty space. In an instant, a brown high leather boot covered in stains fell in. Then, the old farmer squeezed in. Right at this moment, a cold light flashed from Tang In's cuff, which was raised high in the air, as it lightly swept towards the old farmer's throat. The distance between the two of them was so close that Tang In could even clearly see the other person's suddenly contracted pupils. In the blink of an eye, the cold light entered. Tang In put his right hand around the old farmer's neck. With a slight push, he instantly switched positions and hugged the old farmer tightly in his arms. The old farmer's face was filled with disbelief. The violent trembling of his body was restricted to his arms. You want to know who I am? Curious how I found you. So many questions, and don't struggle, it's useless. Let me tell you, I am an assassin and an assassin. As for how I found you, well, to be honest, I chose randomly. Just like how you randomly chose those two passers-by. A few breaths later, his pupils dilated. Tang In took the opportunity to push the old farmer's corpse into the carriage beside him. He turned around and disappeared into the crowd. The entire process ended in a few seconds. The crowd was still in a state of panic. Not far away, a shrill whistle sounded. The guards' cavalry rushed over. This time, the cavalry came very quickly. Of course, the main reason was that the guards' headquarters was on this street. However, the cavalry who arrived first could only stare at the chaotic situation. They could not enter at all, overturned carriages, shoes of all kinds, faint crying sounds. The originally bustling and congested main road of Lion City was now a mess. Damn ol'. Bose rubbed his big red nose and mumbled. He kicked away the high boot in front of him. Blood-red eyes, a red nose, a majestic body, and an unkempt face. If Bose had been at the northern border of the Caesar continent, he would have been attacked by the border guards as a crude beast man. However, not many people dared to attack him in Lion City. It was not only because he was a senior warrior, but also because of his position as the chief of cavalry of Lion City's guards. Although people would privately call the guards' cavalry as cleaners in armor who would only clean up the scene after the event. However, in front of everyone, even the leader of the biggest gang in Lion City would have a headache if he saw Bose. This was a crazy and somewhat perverted guy. This was the consensus of the underground forces of Lion City towards Bose. Once someone offended this guy, even if they did not die, they would at least lose a few layers of skin. Fortunately, Bose did not care about the underground forces. Of course, the prerequisite was that they did not provoke him. What Bose was most interested in were the moles he often cursed, those assassins who took money to kill. According to incomplete statistics, ever since Bose became the chief of cavalry of the guards, the number of assassins who fell under his hands had already reached 3 digits. This was a terrifying number. You have to understand that assassins were not local ruffians. Every qualified assassin was enough to make a small gang unable to eat or sleep in peace. However, Bose actually had so many assassins fall under his hands, so his ability could be seen at a glance. Originally, according to his achievements, he should have been transferred to Brand Country's capital a long time ago. Working there for a few years and getting a low noble rank wasn't impossible. In reality, The Empire's first promotion order had already been passed down to Lion City 5 or 6 years ago. The content was to transfer Bose to Brand City as the Vice Chief of Dragon Riders. This was undoubtedly a huge promotion. Because of this, Lion City's underground forces and a few assassins who hid in the shadows celebrated for a long time. However, that promotion and reward order that everyone envied had been placed in the drawer of the City Lord for a few years and had never been issued. It obviously wasn't that the City Lord was unwilling to issue it, but rather that Bose never went to receive it, nor was he willing to receive it. Everyone was confused, and only later on did they understand the reason. Turns out this Bose said that he would only leave Lion City when he caught Ghostface. When the underground forces and assassins who rejoiced for nothing heard this news, they all cried out in hatred. Wasn't this just asking for a beating? If he was given a reward, then just take it and get lost. What was the point of wasting time here? In the end, even Ghostface was cursed. A few assassins even prayed that this top-level expert of theirs would fall under Bose's hands one day. However, after several years passed, Ghostface still hadn't been caught. The unlucky ones were the assassins who were hanged under the gallows in the city plaza from time to time. Although he hadn't slept for a few days, Bose had been in a good mood recently. The reason was simple. Ghostface had killed again. He wouldn't care about those dead gang leaders. Even if over 100 of them died, Bose would take it as a matter of course. The value of these people's deaths was that they would continuously provide him with clues. The more people Ghostface killed, the closer Bose felt he was to Ghostface. As for Winston, Bose's lips twitched. The moment he saw that colorful dagger, he knew that it definitely wasn't Ghostface's doing. What kind of inferior imitation was that? Ghostface's drawing was much better. However, he didn't say this to outsiders. Firstly, there was no evidence. After all, he didn't have the real Ghostface's dagger. Secondly, he could make use of this public opinion to track down that assassin in the dark. Of course, there was another important reason in his heart. He felt that this was also a train of thought. If someone really splashed dirty water on Ghostface, it might lead to something. Bugnes, how is it? Bose asked a middle-aged man who appeared to be very capable. Bugnes was Bose's assistant. The two of them had been partners for many years, and there were also a character who gave the underground influences headaches. A gang boss had once commented that if Bose was an unreasonable bear, then Bugnes was an agile wolf. Not too good, Bose. The one who was attacked was Viscount Clark's eldest son. Thankfully, he wasn't injured. Otherwise, the chief would definitely go crazy. Bugnes shrugged, then smiled and said, "But it should be good news for you. There were a total of 2 assassins. One was killed by the guards on the spot, while the other was discovered to have died in a horse carriage for no reason when they were cleaning up the scene." Yo, that's good news. Ha! Come, let's go take a look. The 2 assassins' corpses were placed side by side, and there were crossbows, daggers, and other things on the ground next to them. The chest of the one on the right was almost caved in, and the cause of death was obvious. The one on the left looked very normal, and there were no obvious wounds. Yo, the disguise is not bad. Bose commented on the assassin dressed as the old farmer. Bugnes squatted down and lifted the assassin's chin. Beautiful, Bose praised. Bugnes nodded in agreement. A standard throat slit. From the marks on the body, there was no resistance at all. This means that the assassin was killed in a single strike at close range. Damn professional. Only a mole would know how to get close to another mole. Was it a double cross? Bose's judgment was also very professional. To be able to find a disguised assassin in a crowd and use such a professional method, it could only be another assassin. That's possible, but before this assassin was killed, he used 2 ordinary citizens to block the blade and escaped. Oh, damn. Bugnes, you don't think that those cold-blooded people have a sense of justice, do you? That's only one possibility. Bugnes, you're thinking too much. I've said it many times, Bose, this is called being cautious. Sir Bose. A cavalry ran over from afar and saluted. Bose waved his hand, casually speak. There was an assassination case in the East City area. Viscount Charles's eldest son was stabbed. Bose opened his mouth in shock. Mother asterisk her, is Lion City going to have a big change? Bugny sighed. I don't know if Lion City is going to change, but I know that our poor director is definitely going to go crazy. His precious mahogany door will be kicked down by some noble. P.S. Kick down the door, check the water meter. Check the bookshelf and recommendation tickets. If you have them, quickly save them and give them recommendation tickets. Haha carrot. Chidian website welcomes readers to read. The latest, fastest, and most popular series are all original works at Chidian. Chapter 34. The mahogany door to the police chief's office was still there. After all, they were all aristocrats and cultured people. They wouldn't dare to kick someone else's door. Of course, if they could restrain their saliva a little, they'd look more like an aristocrat. The short and fat police chief thought as he took out his handkerchief. In broad daylight, O God of light, an assassin dared to commit murder in front of everyone. What's the use of your police station? Yes. My son has been dead for a day, and the culprit hasn't been caught. Can you still be the police chief? We've already investigated this matter. Investigation? My son's body has already turned cold, and you're telling me that you're still investigating? Let me tell you, if you don't give me an explanation today, don't blame me for voting against the police station when they apply for funding next year. Yes. The police chief kept wiping the saliva off his face with his handkerchief and nodded repeatedly. The one who killed your son was Ghostface, the #1 assassin who'd been active in Lion City for over 10 years. If I could give you an explanation, why would I be here listening to you scolding me? I'd have long been transferred to Brand City to get promoted and get rich, of course. The police chief could only think about these in his heart. Although he was an administrative official in Brand Country, he didn't have a noble title. Therefore, when he met aristocrats, such as this Viscount Dirk, he could only continue to pretend to be subservient. On the other hand, Viscount Dirk was even angrier when he saw the submissive police chief who had no practical means to deal with him. Of course, he had a reason to be angry. Anyone would be angry when their son was assassinated. Moreover, it was the eldest son. Dirk's heart was bleeding. Winston wasn't just the eldest son of the family. He was also the opportunity for the family to revitalize. A magician, O God of light, a real magician. As long as Winston married this magician, if there were no accidents, their family's noble title would definitely rise to that of an earl within the second or third generation. But now, everything was ruined by that damned assassin. What should they do now? Should they let their second son pursue Josiah again? Wasn't this nonsense? Even if their family agreed, the Crowley family couldn't afford to lose face. Bang! Just then, the police chief's mahogany door was slammed open. The head of the police force felt a stab of pain in his heart, and he was about to jump up and curse. But when he saw who it was, he immediately deflated like a deflated balloon. He forced a smile and greeted, "Oh, isn't this the Honorable Viscount Clark? What brings you here? What wind? Does it mean you don't know?" The enraged Viscount Clark exploded in an instant. He stretched his neck and roared, "My son was assassinated on the street next to your police station. How could you, the chief of the police station, not know about it? Are you still fit to be the chief of the police force? Every year, a huge sum of money is used to feed you good-for-nothings?" Yes. The head of the police force resisted the urge to wipe the saliva off his face and habitually turned on his obedient mode. "Is your son dead?" "No." "Oh, isn't this Viscount Dirk?" Hearing the question, Viscount Clark saw that there was someone standing in the office. He immediately changed the topic and said mockingly, "What's wrong? You seem very disappointed to hear that my son isn't dead." "Yes, it is indeed quite regretful," Viscount Dirk said expressionlessly. Viscount Clark pointed angrily. "Bah, you despicable person. I knew it was you who hired the assassin." An unnatural expression flashed across Viscount Dirk's face, and then he scolded loudly, "You old bastard, this is the police station. You have to have evidence before you speak. Also, did you hire the assassin to kill my son? How dare you come in front of me and call me a thief. Don't slander me. All right, these two are quarreling. The head of the police force felt his head hurt even more, and he hurriedly went up to stop them. In the end, he was sandwiched between the two of them. He spat a lot of saliva and quickly lost. All right, you guys can quarrel if you want. I won't serve you anymore. The head of the police force closed the door, pulled a chair, and sat at the side to watch the show. However, after sitting for a few minutes, he suddenly jumped up anxiously and rushed in between the two of them to block them. It turned out that Viscount Clark was old, and he wasn't as strong as Viscount Dirk in his prime. He was gradually losing in the quarrel. In the end, his old face became even redder, and he almost vomited blood. Thus, in a fit of anger, he threw a white glove on Viscount Dirk's face and asked for a duel. Seeing this, Dirk was happy. This was exactly what he wanted. He hurriedly threw the white glove over and was about to draw his sword. The head of the police force didn't dare to let these two duel in his office. If something happened, he would be the first unlucky one. Despicable person, give me your life. Io, calm down. Calm down, old bastard, come and die. Bang. The mahogany door that was just closed was slammed open again. The three people who were fighting in the room suddenly became silent. Mother Kerr, who was at this time, the head of the police force, was in between the two viscounts, and his vision was blocked for a moment. When he heard his beloved mahogany door being slammed open again, he couldn't help but curse out angrily. Bastard, you dare to curse me. How dare you? After the person slammed the door open, he was stunned when he saw the scene in the room. However, after being scolded, he immediately became angry. He rushed over and pointed his finger at the head of the police force's nose and roared. Isn't this the respected Viscount Charles? You must have heard wrongly. How would I dare to curse you? I was cursing myself, hee. When the head of the police force saw the person who came, he immediately explained with a bitter face. Seeing that Charles's face was slightly better, the head of the police force quickly changed the topic. What are you doing here? Who knew that it would be better if he didn't ask? This question immediately made Viscount Charles's face darken. You still have the face to ask me? My son was assassinated when he just stepped out of the house today. What is the job of the police force? Can you still be the head of the police force? The head of the police force wanted to cry, but had no tears. In this short period of time, his position had already been taken down 3 times. Then, is your son dead? Injured, not dead. Oh, it's you, bastard. Speak, did you send this assassin? When Viscount Charles saw Viscount Dirk, he immediately became angry and raised his voice by an octave. Pa, did you go to the Thieves' Association and place an assassination bounty on my son Vincent? When Viscount Clark saw that there was a new force, he immediately became spirited. It's definitely this despicable fellow. My son was also assassinated. Think about it. Why didn't other people get assassinated, but our 2 families? Isn't it obvious? We have the most enmity with him. Good, Dirk. I am now officially informing you, as the head of the family, that our Charles family declares war on the Dirk family. I'm also informing you, as the head of the family, that our Clark family declares war on the Dirk family. Seeing that the 2 families had declared war, Viscount Dirk's face was fearless. Good. As the head of the family, I officially announce that the Dirk family accepts your declaration of war. Let's wait and see him. After saying that, with a bang, Viscount Dirk slammed the door and left. Bang, bang, Viscount Clark and Viscount Charles also slammed the door and left. The sound was louder and louder, as if they wanted to suppress the other party from here on out. The police chief, who had already been forgotten by the 3, stood at the side in a daze. The loud noises seemed to be knocking on his heart. Damn it, don't they have any manners? Don't they know how to knock before entering? Didn't they take etiquette lessons when they were young, and they even slammed the door? Bastard. The short and fat police chief was completely ignited like a barrel of gunpowder. He cursed loudly in the office. Hoochie. That's right, what did they say in the end? The police chief's face suddenly changed, and he jumped up 3 feet. With a bang, he suddenly opened the door, called all cavalry units to gather and wait for orders at the headquarters. Boom! The police chief and the office staff outside stared blankly at the suddenly collapsed mahogany door. They were speechless for a while. The pitiful mahogany door finally couldn't take it anymore and was destroyed in the hands of the police chief. "Ah, police chief, what happened to you? Someone come quickly." The police chief fainted. Chapter 35. In the thick book of history, those who could be passed down to the later generations were all so-called big shots. Regardless of whether they were famous or infamous, at the very least, they had left their mark on the pages of history. As for the small shots, of course, they were forgotten existences. However, when we read through history, we would often discover that the fuses for some big events that had far-reaching effects were ignited by these small shots. Right now, Tang In was undoubtedly a small shot. Moreover, he was a negative character in public opinion. He wouldn't know what kind of storm he had brought to Lion City by killing Winston in order to keep his identity a secret. On a certain day in autumn 554 of the brand calendar, the citizens of Lion City were living their lives as usual. The commoners were always busy for food and clothing, while the aristocrats were busy gathering for fun. They wouldn't know that this day would become the beginning of the Lion riot in the future. On that day, there were no signs of unrest in the Lion tabloids. They even announced an exciting piece of news. The Lion City government had decided to expand the docks at the Southport. There would be 24 of them. In addition to the 76 from before, there would be a total of 100. This move was undoubtedly to everyone's delight. To the commoners, there would be more jobs. To the merchants, it would increase the speed of their goods entering and exiting. To the aristocrats, although the aristocrats had heard about it long ago, the government decree hadn't been issued yet. Everything was still unknown. Therefore, they had only made some preparations. Now that the government decree had been announced in black and white, some powerful aristocrats were naturally eager to go all out. However, before they could completely digest this news, an even more shocking piece of news came. The Delk family had declared war on the Clark and Charles families for hiring assassins. The aristocratic circle in Lion City had been quiet for too long. All of a sudden, there were 3 powerful Viscount families participating in the battle, which instantly aroused intense interest among the aristocrats. They couldn't understand the Delk family's actions, declaring war on 2 families that were on par with them at the same time. Wasn't this seeking their own destruction? Could it be that Viscount Delk had lost his rationality due to the pain of losing his son? The obvious comparison in strength made it so that no one had high hopes for the Delk family. However, the aristocrats who were prepared to watch a good show were shocked once again. Viscount Andrew's family urgently announced that they had declared war on the Clark and Charles families. Viscount Achilles' family urgently announced that they had declared war on the Clark and Charles families. Viscount Chester's family, Viscount Quinnell's family. In a short 2 hours, the 4 Viscount families had declared war on the Clark and Charles families. Originally, the 1 versus 2 situation was not optimistic, but in an instant, it became a 5 versus 2 situation. The entire circle of nobles was agitated. The spectating nobles immediately jumped up and down to inquire about what had happened. Was this the start of the war between the nobles in Lion City? Even the nobles watching from the sidelines were so shocked, let alone those who were in the middle of it. Viscount Clark and Viscount Charles were completely dumbfounded when they saw the 4 declarations of war on the table that had just been handed over. There was no enmity between them in the past and in the past. Why did they suddenly start fighting? When the 2 of them regained their senses, they hurriedly ordered the housekeeper to prepare gifts and send them to the 4 clans that had joined the war. They wanted to find out what was going on. After a short while, their respective housekeepers returned with gifts. This caused their hearts to sink, and they knew that the situation was not good. Then, the news that the housekeepers told them made them widen their eyes. The reason of the 4 families is the same. They claim that they're the allies of the Delk family. In view of your shameless actions towards the eldest son of the Delk family, they can no longer tolerate it and declared war on you. This is a King conspiracy. The two of them were furious. They had declared war on the Delk family because of the assassination of their eldest son. Why did they become the murderers of Winston in the end? Also, when did the five of you form an alliance? It was only when the five of you formed an alliance that their grandson declared war. Although they scolded, they still had to face this matter. This was a matter of life and death for their families. Viscount Clark and Viscount Charles immediately gathered together. You were the one who hired the assassins. You were the one who hired the assassins? They were speechless, but this also allowed them to know that it wasn't the other party who had set them up. Then, the two of them scolded the Delk family. They were two Kings shameless, a thief claiming to be a thief. The two of them also knew that scolding wouldn't help solve the problem. After a few words, they quickly discussed countermeasures. Now that there was a huge disparity in strength between the two sides, the solution was obvious. Either they would surrender without hesitation, or they would pull in a few powerful allies to boost their morale. What? You said to start a war to take revenge for the assassination of their eldest son? Please, what kind of joke was this? In this situation, even if their eldest son was killed, they couldn't talk about taking revenge, let alone if their eldest son wasn't dead. The survival of the family was always the #1 priority. After all, if their eldest son died, they could still have another. If their family was gone, it would be completely over. However, the two of them were hesitant about these two choices. The first choice was needless to say. It was a matter of the family's honor. As for the second choice, which noble should they find to help them at this moment? Those with low status were useless, while those with high status were sent to them. They didn't know how much they would be blackmailed before the two of them finished weighing their options. The rapid development of the situation had already set a conclusion for this matter. A butler of the Clark family staggered in. Master, something bad has happened. Something bad has happened. Be starred. What are you panicking for? Viscount Clark was annoyed, seeing that his butler was so ungentlemanly, losing his face in front of outsiders. He immediately reprimanded him. But what? Tidy up your attire first. You are wearing a hat, not shoes. Yes. The butler hurriedly smoothed his clothes and adjusted his hat. Viscount Clark nodded in satisfaction. Speak. What is it? The butler said slowly. The gang supported by our family was attacked and suffered heavy losses. What? Clark suddenly stood up. Who did it? Idiot. Why didn't you tell me earlier? The butler was tongue-tied. He was completely speechless. A gang supported by the family? Charles raised his eyebrows. Of course, he knew what this meant. It was mentioned that the Southport's pier belonged to the Brand Kingdom in name. Although everyone in Lion City tacitly agreed that a certain family was in charge of a certain pier. However, this kind of taboo could not be done openly. Therefore, the families who had control of the pier supported a local gang to manage it. The Clark family was also a nobleman. They didn't have a pier themselves. Now that they had formed a gang, they naturally wanted to fight for the pier this time. Now that the gang was destroyed, how could he not be anxious? Idiot, what are you still standing here for? Hurry up and inform the family guards to go and rescue them. Yes. The butler answered and started to walk out. Idiot, why are you still leaving? Hurry up and run. The Clark family saw the butler's actions and immediately jumped up and kicked him. Yes. The butler scrambled out of the room again. Ouch. Who knew that before the miserable butler could run out, he would be bumped into by someone who came in? The two of them immediately rolled on the ground. Master, something bad happened. The person who came in didn't care who he bumped into and shouted at the top of his lungs. Speak. This time, it was the ashen-faced Charles. He already had a bad premonition. Our family's cloth shop in the West City was destroyed. What? Although he was prepared, it didn't mean that he wasn't angry. Charles slammed the table and suddenly stood up. Idiot, who did it? I couldn't see clearly. They came in with their faces covered and smashed everything they saw. They beat up everyone they saw and left after a few minutes. Idiot, they're too arrogant. Have you reported it to the authorities? Not yet. Viscount Charles glared and roared. Then why are you still standing here, idiot? Hurry up and go. Yes, yes. Master, something bad has happened. Our family's winery in the East City was destroyed. Master, something bad has happened. Our family's hotel in the West City was destroyed. When Viscount Clark and Viscount Charles heard the words, Master, one after another, they felt like they were listening to someone crying at a funeral. Their hands and feet turned cold. Charles's legs trembled, and he sat back down on the chair. Viscount Clark was old, and he was even weaker now. His old face was red, and he took a few quick breaths. His eyes rolled back, and he fell backward. Master, Master, quickly call the doctor over. After a flurry, a large bowl of tonic soup was poured in. Finally, Viscount Clark opened his eyes again. Viscount Clark, who was awake, was stunned. He waved his hand weakly and said, Surrender. Sigh. Viscount Charles sighed and didn't object. At this point, even if the two of them were stupid, they knew that this wasn't a coincidence. It was the joint attack of the 5 families. In the face of such an open conspiracy, there was nothing else to think about other than surrendering. That afternoon, less than half a day had passed since the declaration of war. The Clark family and the Charles family announced their surrender, willing to bear the responsibility for Winston's death. There was silence in the aristocrats' circle. They no longer had the mood to watch the show. The methods of the 5 families' alliance were clear. They acted quickly, accurately, and ruthlessly. They didn't give you any time to react at all. Such actions caused the aristocrats to feel a chill in their hearts. No one knew if they would become the next target. Although it was said that aristocrats had to have a good reason for fighting, wasn't it easy to think of a reason? Which aristocrat with power didn't have conflicts with others after so many years of development? When old scores were dug up, there were plenty of reasons. While the citizens of Lian City were rejoicing over the expansion of the harbor, the aristocrats' circle was dead silent. This dead silence was like the atmosphere before a storm, suffocating, begging to be collected and recommended. Today's collection isn't good enough. All right, I'll go all out. Tomorrow, 3rd update. Human, cat quality guaranteed. Chidian website welcomes readers to read. The latest, fastest, and most popular series are all original works at Chidian. Chapter 36. Good morning, Mr. Arthur. This is today's newspaper. Good morning, Alan. Thank you. What's the big news today? Haha, you're welcome. It's on the way. It's the same as yesterday. Another gang was destroyed at Southport. I don't know what's going on recently, but there are a lot of gang fights. Even Layton's tabloids started to talk about it. It even took over the business section. Seriously? All right, I have to go. See you tomorrow. Sigh. I haven't paid for the paper yet. Give it to me tomorrow. Looking at Alan running away with a small bag, Tang In smiled and shook his head. Ever since he knew that Tang In read the newspaper every day, Alan seemed to have found a soulmate. Every time he came over from Southport, he would send a copy to Tang In. Tang In had been busy learning new skills these few days, so he was naturally happy to have a postman like this. Moreover, this Alan really had the aura of Lion City's information broker. He was definitely well informed. No matter what kind of thing it was, he knew a little about it. Every day, without needing to ask, he would tell Twain about the day's hot topics like beans from a bamboo tube. Tang In opened the newspaper. As expected, there were a few pages introducing the recent gang fights in Lion City. One of them even took over Alan's favorite business section. It was no wonder that Alan complained. After skimming through it, Tang In put the newspaper aside. The reason why he bought the newspaper was to understand more about the customs of the other world. He had no interest in gang fights. However, gang fights, Tang In thought to himself. This was a good time to make a move. It was a good time to test the actual power of the skills he learned these few days. All right, it's decided then. Tang In snapped his fingers. Suddenly, a figure flew in the room. The path was strange and hard to distinguish. In an instant, he circled the room 3 times and finally disappeared at the stairs on the 2nd floor. Ghost. Normal skill can be leveled up. Once activated, the figure turns into thousands of illusions. It's strange and unpredictable. Skill lasts for 20 seconds. Cooldown time, 1 minute. Consumes 200 HP. A moment later, a middle-aged man with a sallow complexion walked out of the 2-story loft and slowly walked towards the Thieves' Union. The Thieves' Union seemed to be more lively than usual. Tangen waited for a while before he found an empty room. Inserting the identification crystal ball and entering the password, he entered the mission interface. Whoa! Tangen was surprised to see that the assassination mission page was actually full. After looking through the missions, Tangen couldn't help but sigh. Sure enough, the more chaotic the era was, the better the assassin's business was. Most of the targets of these missions were gang members. Thinking back to the recent chaotic battles between the gangs, everything made sense. However, even though there were many quests available, Tang In was only a level 1 thief. He could only accept quests that cost 1 to 5 gold coins each. Sure enough, after Tang In clicked on the next level, there were a lot fewer missions. Tang In was surprised to see a 10,000 gold coin bounty mission at the top of the page. What's going on? Is the crystal ball broken? Tang In curiously clicked on it. Mission number, ******** target. Leader of a certain underground gang client's request. Kill on the specified day. Bounty, 50,000 note. At the client's request, this assassination mission has no level restriction. Any thief can accept it. Points will be calculated after completion. Guild's friendly reminder. Thieves below level 3 should accept it with caution. Interesting. It's actually a mission with no level restriction. Tang was a little tempted. To be honest, it was a piece of cake for him to kill those gang leaders now. It was as easy as blowing off dust. This way, he wouldn't be able to test his own strength and the actual power of his skills. All right, I'll accept it first. I won't lose anything anyway. Thinking of this, Tang In clicked confirm to accept the mission. Beep. Mission accepted. The following is the target's detailed information. Target name, Sam. 6 feet tall, strong body. Scar on left side of face. Flame Dragon Society leader. Strength unknown. Gang encampment at South Harbor Sunset Street. Client wants the assassination to be completed on X day. After the mission is completed, please submit it promptly. Guild will investigate and confirm within 1 day. X day? F***CK. Isn't it today? At least give me some time to investigate. Tang In hesitated. The lack of time meant that they were not fully prepared. It was a taboo for an assassin to take action without sufficient preparation. This was also something that the old butler had repeatedly emphasized. However, this was a rare opportunity. Tang In really didn't want to give it up. Forget it. I'll go check out the situation first. If it really doesn't work, I won't take action. In the end, Tang In still made up his mind and walked towards South Harbor. The South Harbor Pier had created countless wealth for Lion City. Its main streets were also extremely prosperous and luxurious. However, even the most dazzling sunlight would have dark corners where it couldn't shine. There were still some places in South Harbor that were as poor as a church mouse. For example, Sunset Street. Densely packed low huts, narrow and dirty streets, scantily clad children playing around, burly men passing by from time to time. This was a poor and chaotic place. However, at the end of this street, there was a rather neat building complex. From the various unfriendly people entering and exiting here and the barricades set up in front of the gate, one could tell that this wasn't a simple place. This was the base of one of the 3 major gangs in Lion City, the Flame Dragon Society. The Flame Dragon Society was an old gang in Lion City. They had thousands of members and were very powerful. The current gang leader, Sam, was a cunning and ruthless person. Under his leadership, the Flame Dragon Society had been through numerous gang wars and government encirclement and suppression, but they still stood strong and continued to grow. However, there were also rumors that the reason why the Flame Dragon Society could withstand so many encirclement and suppression was because their backer was Earl Matthews, one of the 4 major Earl families in Lion City. At this moment, In a two-story building about 100 meters behind the Flame Dragon Society's base, there were two people in armor standing behind the window and observing the situation in front of them. One of them looked particularly wretched as he lifted a corner of the curtain. Suddenly, he said excitedly, "Yo, look, here comes another scouting mole." The other person looked somewhat helpless. "Hey, Bose, what we're doing isn't very good." Bose looked back in surprise. "What? Is there a loophole in my caged rat plan?" "I'm not talking about that. I'm saying that we've always disobeyed the director's orders. It's fine." Bose waved his hand, looking very unconcerned. "Quelling the unrest in the farms is the business of the nobles. Sending our cavalry over is obviously luring the tiger away from the mountain. Good thing I'm well informed." "Huh? How can a gathering of moles not have a cat? When the time comes, we'll surround the building behind here, and our brothers inside will provide support. TSK, this net. I'm really looking forward to it." Hearing that, the Bugnes said in surprise, "Just surround the back? Then what about the front?" This is obviously a diversionary tactic. Bose spread his hands and said, "In front. Didn't we leave a troop of cavalry there?" "A troop of cavalry? You sold Sam out just like that? At least he cooperated with your rat plan." "What are you talking about? Am I that kind of person?" Bose looked very innocent. "Didn't we also help him solve the problem at the back? As for the front, it's obviously a fight between the nobles. We just need to leave a troop of cavalry to help them clean up the scene." "You're really something." Bugnes laughed and shook his head. Then he sighed. "Speaking of which, the alliance of these 5 families is really gutsy, daring to mess with the tiger's whiskers. I think there's an 80% chance that there's an expert commanding these 5 families, but I wonder which of the other 3 earls it is." Bose peeked outside and said casually, "Why do you care so much? How can we interfere in the fight between the nobles? It's more practical to catch moles. Haha. If we succeed this time, Lion City will definitely be much quieter." "That's true. There have been hundreds of assassins scouting the area these few days." Bugnes suddenly had a thought. He said, "Do you think Ghostface will come?" Bose said indifferently, "Who knows? It's best if he comes. My appetite is big and small. I'll give it all to him." "Ouch! Quickly shrink your head back. This mole is quite alert." Outside the Flame Dragon Union, Tang In frowned and looked around. Why did he have a strange feeling? Shaking his head, Tang In got rid of the distracting thoughts in his mind and continued to observe the situation of the guards behind the station. Chapter 37. Bowing to thank my book friends 10 Dark Nights, and name doesn't matter for their tips. Your support and affirmation are the motivation for me to keep writing. Night fell early in the morning. The Flame Dragon Union's encampment was pitch black, with only a few flickering lanterns at the back of the entrance. A few large men armed with swords were standing guard. There were also figures patrolling the area from the watchtowers on the walls. Dressed in black, Tang In made his way to the outer perimeter of the walls. After a preliminary investigation during the day, he found that the encampment's security wasn't very tight, so he could sneak in. Although it was a little strange that such a large guild's security was so lax, he was in a hurry. If he missed tonight, he might not have such an opportunity again. Therefore, after recovering his blood and chi in the early morning, Tang In suppressed the uneasiness in his heart and prepared to take action. The lights were dim, and the guards at the entrance weren't an obstacle at all. The only thing he needed to pay attention to was not to expose himself to the lookout tower's line of sight. After a group of mobile patrolling sentries passed by, Tang indecisively approached the wall. Jumped up. Holding 2 nails with both hands, he nailed them into the wall. His black figure stuck to the wall as if he had merged into it. After a moment of silence, the surroundings were silent. Like a gecko, Tang In began to slowly climb up using the force. The route had been determined during the day, and it was the lookout tower's blind spot. Very smoothly, Tang In climbed up the wall. Just as Tang In was about to go around the lookout tower, he suddenly found the patrolling figure inside a little strange. That figure had been in this position since he was about to sneak in, not moving at all. This was very abnormal. No matter how dedicated you are, you should turn your head and look around. Tang An's heart skipped a beat. He took the risk and sneaked over, opening the wooden door of the lookout tower. Inside the lookout tower, under the light of the bronze oil lamp hanging in the air, a large man armed with a sword was lying on the ground, blood spreading everywhere. As for the person leaning against the lookout tower, his throat had been slit, and a wooden stick was held against his throat. From the outside, it naturally looked like he was patrolling. There were colleagues. This was also within Tang Un's expectations. After all, there were 50,000 gold coins and no level restriction. Naturally, many assassins would be willing to try their luck. Tang Un did not touch the arrangement inside the watchtower. He opened the wooden door and wanted to leave. Unexpectedly, as soon as he stepped out of the watchtower, he saw a cold light piercing towards his forehead. F***CK. With a bang, Tang Un's back hit the wooden door and he retreated. The dagger hidden in his right elbow popped out. Ding, ding, ding. Sparks flew in all directions as cold light intersected. The two daggers clashed many times in an instant. At such a close distance, both sides reacted instinctively. After defending for more than 10 attacks, Tang Un seized a gap and directly stepped out diagonally. He kicked the opponent's lower abdomen and sent him flying out of the watchtower. Before Tang Un could pursue an attack, two more cold stars came straight at his face. Tang Un had no choice but to stop and dodge sideways. Thud, thud. Two curved crescent blades nailed into the wooden door. The ambusher took advantage of the situation and flipped over. The two were back in a standoff. Tang Un sized up his opponent. With one look, Tang Un was immediately depressed. Black clothes, black pants, black face mask, exactly the same as his. At this time, in this place, the opponent was undoubtedly an assassin. After that person saw Tang Un's outfit, he was obviously stunned. He had just climbed up when he saw the wooden door suddenly open. He thought that Tang Un was a guard, so of course he wanted to attack first to prevent the other party from alerting him. In the end, after a dozen attacks, he was kicked out. He was just thinking that if a small fry from the Flame Dragon Union had such strength, why would he come to assassinate? Just as the two were in an awkward standoff, a soft ding sound was heard. A black iron claw swung up between the two of them and grabbed the wall. In just a moment, another person, also dressed in black, flipped over. Just as that person landed, he saw a black figure standing in front of him. The figure clearly trembled, and a bright dagger instantly flashed. Damn! Looking at the assassin who flashed his dagger at him, Tang Un touched his nose gloomily. How many people of the same profession would come tonight? The competition was too fierce. Cough, cough. The assassin who attacked Tang Un first cleared his throat. This sound made the assassin even more nervous. He turned around and saw another figure behind him. Brother, don't be nervous. Seeing the person who came up later take out another dagger, the first assassin hurriedly said, "We're all of the same profession, there's no need to kill each other." Then he hurriedly said to Tang Un, "Just now, it was a misunderstanding." Tang Un nodded, indicating that he understood. The assassin who came up later also saw their outfits at this time. He immediately breathed a sigh of relief and lowered his daggers. What a coincidence! Hee, how could it not be? With such a long wall, in the blink of an eye, three people of the same profession had bumped into each other. I say, it's not good to just stand here like this. Why don't we all do as we please? The assassin who came later was clearly a little anxious. Thinking about it, who knew how many assassins had already sneaked in? What if someone else beat them to it or alerted the enemy? Tang Un and the first assassin spread their hands in agreement. The assassin who came later cupped his hands at the two of them, then went down the stairs and disappeared into the night. Then, the first assassin also cupped his hands at Tang Un in a slightly awkward manner, smiled bitterly, and went down the stairs. At this time, Tang Un already didn't have much hope of completing this mission. With so many assassins sneaking in, it would all depend on luck to see who would succeed in the assassination in the end. But it wasn't worth it to say that he gave up now. After all, he had worked so hard to climb up. In the end, Tang In still decided to go down and take a look. In a small building 100 meters behind the Flame Dragon Union's base, Bo smiled and said, "Bugnes, how many moles did you see go in?" 63. "What about you?" 71. "Sigh, I don't know if I can gather 100. Bo seemed to be unsatisfied. When do we attack?" "No hurry, let's go. First, let's check the illuminating crystals and concealing dust. If there are no problems, then attack." On the outskirts of Fallen Moon Street, a wide and luxurious carriage slowly stopped. Inside the carriage, there were 6 well-dressed men with extraordinary manners. If there was a noble who saw these people at this time, he would definitely cry out in surprise. Because among them, the 5 older ones were Viscount Dirk and the heads of the other 4 Viscount families, who had received a lot of attention recently. As for the other golden-haired man in the prime of his life, he wasn't a simple character either. This person was the son of the mayor, Robert Bevan. At this time, there was a light knock on the carriage door. Butler Gray walked in and nodded to Bevan. Bevan stood up and smiled. "Everyone, according to the information from the Flame Dragon Union, most of the assassins have already infiltrated. We have to seize the opportunity to attack." The 5 Viscounts stood up and looked at each other. In the end, Viscount Dirk smiled and said, "We will listen to Sir Bevan's command. We have no objections." In the recent days of fighting, these 5 families had made a qualitative leap in both the strength of their gangs and their own economic strength. After tasting the benefits, they naturally had no objections to Bevan, the mastermind of all these operations. "Good, then Bevan won't be polite. Everyone, please immediately let the gang supported by your families attack from the front with the Golden Lion Gang as the arrowhead." The Golden Lion Gang was one of the 3 major gangs in Lion City. Their strength was similar to the Flame Dragon Union, and their backer was, of course, the Robert family. "Okay, no problem." The 5 Viscount heads called their subordinates and passed down the order. Bevan raised his wine cup. "Then, let us drink to the success of this operation. Please. Cheers." "Oh, what is that?" a Viscount cried out involuntarily. In the direction of the Flame Dragon Union's base, a ray of light suddenly shot into the sky, illuminating the area as bright as day. Chapter 38. When Tangen's eyes suddenly lit up, he knew that the situation was not good. He searched a few rooms, but they were all empty. This was clearly a trap. Whoosh, 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 the familiar sound in his ears made Tangen shudder. He did not have time to think and directly crashed into a room beside him, rolling under a table. Thud, thud, thud. The buildings here were mainly made of wood. The sound of arrows being nailed on them was like rain hitting banana leaves. From time to time, there were some powerful arrows that directly penetrated the windows and shot into the room. Bang! Wood chips flew everywhere. Tang and subconsciously pulled back his hand. A sharp arrow passed through the wooden table, grazed Tang Un's arm, and nailed to the ground. The tail feathers of the arrow trembled nonstop. Some of the flesh on his arm was scraped. Fortunately, Tang In reacted in time. Otherwise, it would not be as simple as a scratch. His entire hand would have been nailed to the ground. This won't do. The table is too fragile. Tangen looked around. The most sturdy thing in the room was the bed. However, the table was still some distance away from the bed. Under this kind of indiscriminate attack, no one could guarantee that they would not be unlucky enough to be hit like just now. "I'll take the risk." Tang and turned over and kicked the table in the direction of the arrow. He activated his haste skill, and his figure instantly shot out. Bang! The table in the air was directly hit by the arrow and exploded. Whoosh, whoosh. Following that, 2 sharp arrows passed in front of Tang in and under his arm. With such a fast speed and such a close distance, as long as these arrows hit the target, Tang In would not be able to turn the situation around. Fortunately, he was lucky. Except for the 2 arrows that almost hit him, the other arrows missed by a lot. Chi! Tang In's soles rubbed against the ground rapidly. His body lowered, and he went under the bed. Huff, huff! Tang In curled up his body and wiped the cold sweat on his forehead, gasping for breath. Although the scene just now happened in the blink of an eye, the danger was really terrifying. Thud, bang, bang. A large number of sharp arrows whistled through the air and rained down on the buildings like a torrential downpour. Tang and hid under the bed and felt the bed constantly trembling. He could hear the sound of wood hitting, the sound of pots breaking, and from time to time, he could hear some screams. Damn it, Tang, and put his palms together. Oh, Buddha, Bodhisattva, Nin, and under such circumstances, apart from praying to the faith of the void to borrow some luck, there was no other way. Compared to the miserable Tang in Bose, who was now standing on the wall and directing the shooting of arrows, was undoubtedly very excited. He rubbed his big red nose until it became even redder. Shoot, don't save me. Shoot all the arrows you have in 10 minutes. I want to see a mole turn into a porcupine, huh? Aim at the blind spots of the house. If one arrow can't penetrate it, then two. There must be a mole hiding there, huh? Playing hide and seek with me. Huh? Someone come. Set fire to me. Wait. Bugnes hurriedly grabbed the crazed bows and said anxiously, "This is the base of the Flame Dragon Union, and the wind is blowing in the wrong direction. If you burn this place, won't Count Matthew fight with the police station?" "Oh, is that so? What AF asterisk king pity." Bose rubbed his nose and reluctantly gave up the plan. A bang! The light on the west wall suddenly dimmed, and a black figure appeared in the middle of the cavalry. As the dagger danced, one of the cavalrymen clutched his throat and staggered off the wall. Then a cold light flashed in the assassin's hand, and a huge, illuminating crystal placed on the wall shattered. The sudden appearance of the assassin brought a considerable amount of chaos to the cavalrymen. Caught off guard, they were about to be broken through. "Mole, stay here for me." As soon as the voice fell, a red sword aura whizzed and cut off the assassin's path. The assassin was helpless. If he didn't want to be cut in half, he could only retreat. Who knew that once he took a step back, he could only retreat step by step. With a majestic figure and violent swordsmanship, Bose was like an accelerated earth dragon, constantly suppressing the assassin with awe-inspiring might. The assassin could only strenuously point his dagger at the weak point of the red sword aura, barely parrying Bose's attack. "Die!" A thunderous voice came from the mouth full of yellow teeth, and the assassin's dagger shattered. The red sword aura expanded and directly swallowed the assassin. With a blood-curdling scream and a spray of blood, the assassin's body was smashed off the wall like a broken sack. In the short span of a dozen seconds, in the short span of a dozen steps, Bose had cleanly and efficiently killed the assassin who had crept up on him. "What are you still standing there for? Check the dust on the stairs for me." Bose roared. Yes. There were a total of 3 stairs leading down from the wall behind the Flame Dragon Union's base. With 3 light puff sounds, 3 pellets were thrown onto the stairs. Immediately, a glittering object scattered in all directions. Suddenly, on the empty eastern staircase, a black figure suddenly appeared due to the absorption of the sparkling dust. Seeing the figure appear, the assassin immediately turned pale with fright and quickly retreated. But at this time, there were already hundreds of arrows aimed at him. Whoosh, whoosh. From the fact that this assassin had mastered the art of invisibility, it could be seen that he wasn't a simple character. But on this kind of narrow stairs without any cover, it was undoubtedly impossible for him to escape unscathed. Ding, ding, ding. The assassin's body glowed with a cold light, but after blocking a dozen attacks, his body was already full of arrows, and he fell to the ground. "Haha, you really turned into a boar." Bose laughed. "Don't stop. Keep shooting for me." The front of the Flame Dragon Union's base was also very lively at this time. Hundreds of burly men were tangled together in a chaotic battle. The sounds of fighting and shouting were unceasing. One side deliberately launched a sneak attack, while the other side was long prepared. The battle had entered a climax from the beginning. From the current situation, the 2 sides were evenly matched. It was likely that the victor wouldn't be decided in a short time. Behind the Flame Dragon Union's members, a dozen burly men in armor were surrounding a middle-aged man with a scar on the left side of his face. The members of the Union weren't regular soldiers. Usually, very few of them would wear iron armor. Because they hadn't undergone systematic training, the heavy armor would only increase their weight and affect their fighting strength. But the dozen burly men in front of them were clearly not ordinary members of the Union. Their bloodthirsty eyes and murderous aura all showed that they were real experts in battle. Such a person should have appeared on the battlefield, not here. The person these people were protecting was naturally not an ordinary person. In fact, this middle-aged man was the Flame Dragon Union's leader, Sam. Sam looked at the situation in front of him expressionlessly, as if he didn't care about the outcome of this battle. But in fact, she couldn't help but sigh in her heart. Careless, careless. No wonder these 5 gangs didn't alert the authorities when they wiped out the other gangs recently. It turns out that the Robert family was behind it. After learning from Bose that someone had offered a huge bounty to assassinate him, Sam followed the clues and found out that the 5 gangs were going to launch a sneak attack on the Flame Dragon Union. He didn't care when he heard the news. In his opinion, those gangs were just jackals. Even if a few jackals gathered together, they wouldn't be a match for a tiger. But he didn't expect that the ones leading the attack would be the Golden Lion Gang. Although these people had changed into the uniforms of the 5 gangs, the Flame Dragon Union and the Golden Lion Gang have been fighting for so many years. They were very familiar with each other and could easily recognize each other. If a lion was hiding among the jackals, then the tiger's advantage naturally disappeared. Sam turned around and said a few words to the burly man behind him. After a moment, one of the burly men drew his sword. Taking a detour from the side of the chaotic scene, he ruthlessly slashed a few people and smoothly escaped, disappearing into the street. Sam nodded in satisfaction. That burly man naturally went to report to the Matthews family for reinforcements. In fact, the dozen or so burly men behind him were all sent by the Matthews family from the army to protect him. Speaking of professionals, they were really different. If it weren't for the fact that he was worried about assassins suddenly attacking, Sam really wanted to send all these military experts into the current chaotic battle. Maybe this battle would end quickly. I wonder how things are going on Bo's side. Has he finished cleaning up those damn assassins? End of night update. Civic Cat products are of 24K pure quality carrot. Chapter 39. Stop shooting. With this order, the rear of the encampment fell into a short silence. After the rain of arrows, all that could be seen was a dilapidated house. The ground was in a mess, and there were no signs of living creatures. Bose looked around and kept nodding his head, seemingly very satisfied with the situation. Cavalry, listen my order. The first squad will stay on the wall and watch these 3 stairs. The other squads will change into close combat equipment and follow me down to kill the remaining moles. Yes, many of the cavalrymen walked down the stairs with their swords and spears in their hands. Bugnes, later you will command the brothers inside to guard the center of the encampment. I want to kill all the moles behind this encampment. Bugnes saluted and walked down the stairs with a green spear. Bose licked his lips, and his bloodshot eyes flashed fiercely. The remaining moles, I hope you won't be scared stiff by the attack just now. The game has just begun. It stopped. Tang Un's ears twitched, and he poked his head out from under the bed. At this time, the house was really full of holes, and he couldn't find a single intact piece of furniture. The shining light outside shone in through the holes, like the morning sun passing through the curtains. It's good to be alive. Tang climbed out from under the bed and looked at the quilt with many arrows stuck in it. He couldn't help but sigh. Search carefully, don't miss any room. Even if it's a small F** jar, you have to stab it with a spear. A murderous roar came from outside. Damn it, they want to kill us all through the holes in the back window. Tang In saw the guards in light armor kick open the doors and search with great fanfare. All the rooms were basically destroyed, and there weren't many places to hide. It was very easy to search. Tang and quickly pushed open the front door and ran out. It was impossible for him to sit and wait for death. The chances of him getting away with it were too small. He could only continue to go deeper into the base and take things one step at a time. Tang believed that he was not the only surviving assassin. If they continued to move forward, they would have a higher chance of meeting other assassins. The more people there were, the higher their chances of breaking through the encirclement. The cavalry's initial search was relatively peaceful. There were only a few sporadic battles. At this time, the cavalry had not completely spread out and were gathered together very densely. Therefore, the surviving assassins would usually scout out the situation and leave as soon as they touched it. The individual combat ability of an assassin was undoubtedly powerful, and these cavalrymen were well aware of this. Therefore, when they searched, they would advance in groups. Whenever they encountered an assassin, they would blow the whistle in their mouths and summon their companions to encircle them. Under such a tactic, the assassins had no better ideas. They could only temporarily retreat, widen the space, and engage in guerrilla warfare. As the cavalry continued to advance, the number of battles in various places became more and more frequent, and the sounds of whistles began to ring out one after another. F***CK. I won't introduce it in the future. Tang cursed silently. His luck was not very good. When he passed through the main door of the house, he collided with a dozen or so cavalrymen. After a short fight, Tang left a wound on the arm of the cavalryman in front. Before he could expand the battle, a dozen spears stabbed at him from different angles. Tang had no choice but to retreat into the house and escape through the window. Now that this group of cavalrymen was behind him, it was reasonable to say that there were many rooms here and the terrain was complicated, so it should be easy to get rid of them. However, as the whistles sounded behind him, more and more cavalrymen joined in the encirclement. There was probably a squadron of cavalrymen behind him now. No, if this continues, I will be surrounded to death sooner or later. I have to think of a way. Tang Yin, who was running quickly, looked at the dilapidated house in front of him. He had an idea and jumped into it. Bang, bang. A series of chaotic sounds came from the house. Looking from the outside, the whole house seemed to have trembled a few times. When Tang Yin walked out of the main door with his face covered in dust, he bumped into the cavalrymen who were chasing after him. Over there, a large group of cavalrymen immediately swarmed over. Tang Yin seemed to be shocked and quickly retreated into the house. Quick, quick, don't let him escape. The leader of the cavalrymen shouted anxiously and chased into the house. The cavalrymen behind him also rushed in. Haha, stay here, you guys. Tang Yin kicked the roof beam and used the momentum to flip out of the back window. Bang! The roof beam that had been destroyed earlier suddenly broke in half. Creak, creak, creak. In an instant, the roof shook and some broken pieces of wood, dust, and debris slowly fell down. Not good, retreat quickly. The leader looked at the roof that was about to collapse and screamed in horror. However, at this time, dozens of burly men in light armor were squeezed together. The people in front wanted to retreat, but the people behind did not know the situation and were in a mess. In the end, no one could escape. The leader of the cavalrymen was the most anxious. At this time, he reacted quickly and jumped out of the window with Tang Yin. Go back! Before the leader of the cavalrymen could rejoice, Tang Yin caught him by the collar and threw him back. Boom! Amidst the screams, the house instantly collapsed like a block of building blocks. Dust flew everywhere. After a while, cough, cough, cough. The wooden planks above were lifted, and dozens of cavalrymen climbed out of the house with dusty faces. After all, it was only a single-story wooden house. It was not possible to kill someone. Only a few unlucky cavalrymen were hit by the roof beam. Their heads were broken and bleeding. After such a long time, Tang naturally disappeared without a trace. Damn it! The leader of the cavalrymen wiped the blood on his head unluckily. He was not hit by the roof beam. When he was thrown in by Tang Yin, he hit the floor. He touched his chest. Damn it! My whistle was stolen by him. On the other side of the corridor, Bose was leading a few cavalrymen forward to search. Bose carried his huge sword casually. Relax, it's very safe here. With my nose, a mole can smell it from 10 feet away. Beep, beep. Before Bose's voice died away, a whistle sounded from the other side. A few cavalrymen immediately held their spears nervously. The whistle meant that there were enemies coming. Compared to their chief's unreliable nose, they were more willing to believe in the whistle. Beep, beep. The cavalrymen became even more nervous and quickly looked around. The whistle meant that the enemy was nearby. Beep, beep. After 2 long whistles, a few cavalrymen were stunned. Why did the whole army retreat? Shouldn't this be an order that only the chief could give? Beep. It was followed by another shrill whistle. A few cavalrymen stared blankly at Bose, whose face was ashen. The sounds of fighting all over the place stopped a little. Suddenly, there was a loud shout. Damn it, which bastard blew me to death? Needless to say, the messy whistle was blown by Tang. The whistle was a communication tool for the cavalrymen. The whistle changed according to the rhythm and represented different meanings. However, Tang didn't know this. He put the whistle in his mouth and blew it randomly, making the cavalrymen very confused. Bose was naturally a shrewd person. After the roar, he knew that there was something fishy. He took out the whistle and blew 3 long and 1 short. Suddenly, the whistle stopped. However, after a while, another whistle sounded. Over there, chase after him. Bose gritted his teeth and ran west. The 3 long and 1 short whistle meant that communication with the whistle had stopped. At this time, the whistle sounded again. It must be the troublemaker. P.S. There are 2 things. 1. Bowing to thank my book friend, Ladder Cloud Zone, for the tip. 2. Haha. With your help, Civic Cat is on a new book list. This feeling is really good. Thank you. Well, I'm currently 12th. Last place. I don't want to be taken down, so please continue to support me. Chapter 40. At the back of the encampment, the cavalry had already advanced halfway. At this moment, both sides had completely engaged in battle. There were about 20 places where they had fought. This meant that there were only 20 or so assassins who had survived the rain of arrows. 1 blow killed at least 50 assassins. No matter what the outcome of this battle was, Bose would definitely become famous in the Brand Kingdom again. Of course, just as he said, Lion City would also be much quieter. After blowing a few times, there were no more whistles. Tang Yin knew that the enemy had seen through his trick, but he had already achieved his goal. Without this communication tool, it would not be so easy for the cavalry to surround him. Tang Yin casually tossed out the whistle and prepared to leave the place. Suddenly, a large palm stretched out from the corner of the broken wall and caught the whistle. I finally found you. You must be happy blowing the whistle. Then, a few people walked out from the broken wall. The person in front had a strong body and held a huge sword in his hand. His red nose was very conspicuous. Tang Yin had just arrived and did not recognize Bose. However, from the fact that his equipment was obviously of a higher grade than the light armor of ordinary cavalry, it could be seen that this person was a leader. Without saying anything, Tang Yin turned and left. Now that he was trapped, he had to break out of the encirclement. This was not an arena competition. Even if he wanted to fight, he would definitely find a soft persimmon. This was obviously a tough nut to crack. He did not want to be a fool. You want to leave after blowing me to death? As soon as he finished speaking, Tang Yin felt an attack coming from behind him. He quickly changed his direction. A crescent-shaped, red, fighting energy brushed past him. Boom! Stone chips flew everywhere. The broken wall behind him was hit, and a hole half the size of a person was formed. F***CK. External release of fighting energy. Tang Yin's eyelids twitched. Josiah had told him about the fighting energy training system. External release of fighting energy was a sign of a high-level warrior. This time, Tang Yin did not hesitate. He took the opportunity to pass through the big hole in the wall and quickly escaped. Boom! Behind him, there was another loud noise. The big hole in the wall had completely turned into the courtyard door. Bose charged over with red light all over his body. His straight-line speed was even faster than Tang En's. Tang En immediately changed direction again and jumped into the house. Boom! The house was directly pierced through by the domineering sword energy. Tang En jumped out the back window in a sorry state. Boom! 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 Next, Tang En kept changing directions and hiding. But Bose raised his hand and released a tyrannical sword chi chop, directly chasing after him. Along the way, they encountered other battles. When the assassins saw Bose, their first reaction was to continuously retreat, as if they were avoiding a snake or scorpion. The cavalrymen hurriedly dodged. After all, Bose recognized them, but Bose's sword energy did not recognize them. Looking at Bose, who seemed to be very leisurely behind him, Tang En cursed inwardly. He thought to himself, "This won't do. Even if I use speed, I'll still be caught up by the sword energy. I must find a chance to counterattack and delay his speed." After making up his mind, Tang En suddenly stopped and turned around. He stretched out his left hand and hooked it, then quickly rushed into a house. "Yo, you still dare to provoke me?" Bose curled his lips and strode in with his huge sword. Tang En was standing quietly in the middle of the house. "Why aren't you running anymore?" "Mole, I haven't played enough yet." Hee hee. "It's not too late to run after killing you." Before he finished speaking, a black shadow flashed. Tang En was already in front of Bose. The blood-red dagger shot out like lightning and went straight for Bose's throat. Good timing. The huge broadsword in Bose's hand seemed to be as light as a feather. It moved like the wind and slashed forward, as if waiting for the galloping Tang En to deliver himself to him. When the sword arrived, the person arrived. Tang En's figure was hit in the waist. Bose did not have the slightest excitement of killing his opponent, because when the huge sword slashed through the middle of his figure, it was as if it was cutting through air. There was no sense of impact at all. It was an illusion. In an instant, wind blew behind his head. Bose did not panic at all. He took a big step forward, reversed the direction of the huge sword, and passed it under his armpit to attack the back. Empty again. Still in front, Bose took another step to the side. He twisted his waist and swung his hips. The huge sword under his right armpit glowed red, and with the help of the force, it swept across in front of him. The red sword aura once again cut Tang En's flashing figure in half at the waist. The illusion disappeared. Empty again, Tang En's figure kept flashing around Bose like a ghost. Front, back, left, right side. Because his speed was too fast, it gave people the feeling that there were more than 10 Tang En besieging Bose. The demonic blood-red dagger drew red threads in the air, and every attack was aimed at the vital points. In the middle, Bose waved his huge sword like a huge fan, creating wind. The sword's shadows were like a wall, and his attacks were not messed up at all. Unfortunately, his attacks were always a beat slower, and he could only cut Tang En's illusion. After fighting for 10 seconds, both sides attacked nearly 100 times, but their weapons did not even touch once. This strange situation was undoubtedly hiding a heavy killing intent. Tang En's advantage was that he was fast in this small area, and he seized the initiative to attack. Bose's advantage was that he had rich combat experience, and his reaction speed was also fast. He could always pass his huge sword to Tang En the moment he attacked. The huge sword was naturally longer than the dagger, so Tang En's attacks always stopped midway. This subtle situation naturally would not last for too long as one of them made a mistake or a sudden inspiration. The result of the battle could be seen immediately. Suddenly, Tang En's dagger flashed red and pierced into Bose's sword shadows. Roar! With a roar, the figures of both sides came together and separated. Tang En instantly stood in the middle of the room. Slowly raising the dagger, Tang En blew gently, and a few whiskers floated down from the blade. The whiskers naturally belonged to the slovenly Bose. Tang En's move was very provocative. Bose's eyes twitched, but he still suppressed the anger in his heart. "What kind of movement is this?" "Ghost charm," Tang En said confidently. However, he sighed in his heart. This Bose was really shrewd. He could not be provoked at all. Moreover, his skill was so high that it really made people despair. Just now, Tang Yin seized the gap when Bose's figure changed and cut the dagger with great difficulty. However, at the crucial moment, he still dodged it, leaving only a few whiskers. Ghost Charm. This name is appropriate. It's a good movement. However, Bose praised, then licked his lips and said, "A mole will always be a mole. The warm-up is over. Next, it's my turn." As soon as his voice fell, Bose's huge sword soared with red flames, and his figure rushed in front of Tang Yin. At this time, there were still 5 seconds left for Ghost Charm skill. Tang Yin naturally did not give way. His figure suddenly appeared beside Bose. "Ha! I've been waiting for you." Bose suddenly inserted his huge sword into the ground. Splitting flame cut. The huge sword flashed red, and suddenly more than 10 red sword lights erupted from the ground in a 1-meter radius around Bose. At such a close distance, such a strange way of attack. Tang Yin was caught off guard. Although he tried his best to dodge, his lower abdomen and back were still hit twice. He vomited blood and flew back. Tang Yin only felt a tumble in his chest. The red dough chi that invaded his body was really overbearing. He did not dare to delay and directly broke out of the window. "Want to run?" Bose took a big stride and was about to jump out of the window to chase. Suddenly, a black-edged scimitar suddenly appeared outside the window and chopped down. This attack was so sudden that Bose could only raise his sword to block. Bang! His figure staggered back. Although he retreated in a sorry state, Bose at least dodged this attack. At this moment, a black-edged scimitar suddenly appeared behind Bose and silently stabbed towards his back. These two attacks were clearly a calculated combo, with the intention of bringing Bose to his death. Good job. Bose seemed to have eyes on his back. His retreating body was forcibly turned back and brushed past the scimitar. Rip! The plate armor on Bose's back did not completely block this attack. That black-edged scimitar actually cut through it like cutting tofu, leaving a 6-inch-long wound on his back. His clothes were instantly soaked with blood. Bose did not care at all. He laughed and said in surprise, "Darkblade, hidden sword, it's you guys. Hi, old Bao have really caught a big mole this time." At this moment, the cavalry that was originally following Bose finally arrived at the door. After hearing the name Darkblade, hidden sword, they immediately raised their spears and became nervous. Darkblade and hidden sword. This was a well-known figure among the assassins in Lion City. They were also on the wanted list of the guards all year round. The assassin profession was supposed to be alone and fight alone. But this Darkblade and hidden sword was an extremely rare assassin combination. There was a legend that these two were twins whose minds were connected. The Darkblade attacked openly. The hidden sword stabbed secretly. Their combined attack was extremely powerful. At this moment, the man in black with the scimitar floated into the room. "Humph, our brothers are still here. The outcome is still unknown. I would like to borrow your head to help us break out of the encirclement." "Haha, no problem. As long as you can defeat Old Bao's sword, there's no harm in lending you my head." Straightforward. Do it. Bowing to thank Ladder Cloud Zone Reader for the tip. Why does it feel a little familiar that you're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel? Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.